everybody. Welcome to the stream. Hello. Welcome on in, everybody. How are you all doing today? Hello. It is so lovely to see you all on this fine Tuesday. Welcome on in. Hello. Of course, I am in my anime regalia. I don't have any Delicious in Dungeon merch, because it hadn't gotten super big yet the last time I went to Hot Topic. But I'm sure the next time I go, there'll be the Delicious in Dungeon merch. But until, yes, my hat does in fact have horns. It's technically, I don't know, it's Anya's little like hair loopy thingies. It's an Anya hat. It's an Anya hat. From Spy X Family. Yep. Spy Family is a show, which is not what we're talking about today, but another show that I highly recommend. I also am wearing my Inuyasha shirt that I got at Target, you know. I think I might be confused the entire stream. That's okay. Today we're gonna be talking about Delicious in Dungeon. These are all animes, Crizzy. These are all animes. Anya is a character from Spy X Family, which is an anime, and this is a merch of her. She's a cute little girl. Inuyasha is also an anime. These animes are not what we're talking about today, because I don't have Delicious in Dungeon merch, yet. Yes, also known as Dungeon Meshi or Dunmesh. Today we're going to be talking about Delicious in Dungeon Meshi or Dunmesh. I don't know what Delicious in Dungeon is either. But I'm looking while I make maps. No worries. Look, hey, if I can enlighten some of you to some of my favorite animes ever, that don't know anything about it, and you guys can just listen to me basically do a live video essay at you, it'll be great. It'll be fun. It'll be good. It'll be really, really fun. If you like video essays about people just talking about things that they enjoy, stick around. That's what this is all going to be about. Where is it at? Like, which streaming platform? Delicious in Dungeon? Delicious in Dungeon is on Netflix. It has a 24-episode run on Netflix right now. The first season is done, over with. You can watch it all right now. You can also read the entire manga. The entire manga is complete. It is very, very good. I highly recommend it. But yeah, full disclosure, I watched the anime up until episode 10. And at that point, that is all that was out of the anime. And I got so hooked on it that I immediately went and read the rest of the story, the entire manga, in a weekend. Before the next episode could even come out. So, I binged the shit out of this anime. It is so good. I highly recommend it. If you like fantasy or fantasy tropes, I highly recommend it. If you like food and anime food, I highly recommend it. If you like asking philosophical questions about food, monsters, and the ecosystem, and also what life and death is, I also recommend it. We'll get into all of those philosophical things, all those things very, very soon. But yeah, so that's what we're doing today. We're going to be talking about Delicious in Dungeon. The first part of this stream, is going to be me talking about the first, the first, like, 17 episodes of Delicious in Dungeon. It's kind of skipping over, I'll be skipping quite a lot of details, or, like, nitty-gritty, like, details about, like, what happens in the anime, and more just talk about kind of the concepts surrounding the anime, and, the big points. So, there'll be a lot to, like, still watch, even if you watch this. Same with the manga. I'll be, like, throwing some, like, spoilers up there, and also we'll be talking about, a lot of the philosophical questions and, like, how it relates and, like, the foreshadowing and stuff. But it is more about the story as a whole and less about a episode by episode retelling. So it shouldn't, if you aren't a huge, like, I can't know anything about this thing person, then stick around. If you don't want to know anything and want to go into it completely blind, feel free to lurk and just mute the tab. Just that's my spoilers thing. So yeah. That is sort of what we're doing today. But yeah, it is Delicious in Dungeon is an anime. On Netflix, the first 24 episodes of the first season are out. I highly recommend you watch it. If you like anime and fantasy and animes that are a lot, like, that they're both silly and also very, very serious. And, like, we'll get into it. This is my pitch to you to like this anime. But I'm very glad that you like Delicious in Dungeon. Victor, thank you so much for being here. Hello. But yeah, we're talking about Delicious in Dungeon today. I'm basically going to be doing, I've titled my presentation Delicious in Dungeon, a masterclass in storytelling and food. So that is kind of what we're going to be talking about. Nico is also correct that the main voice actor for the English dub of the anime is Damien Haas, who is a member of Smosh. Someone that I just recently started being appreciative of. I knew who he was, but, like, I only just recently started watching Smosh, so, like, now I'm even, like, I started watching Smosh after I watched Delicious in Dungeon. So. Yay! I finally got my stickies, a little goblin girl along with Leo. Yay! I'm so glad that they arrived, Edgefit. I'm so glad that they arrived safe. Yay! I'm glad that you got them. Heck yeah. Have a very good lurk while you make maps, Bill. Thank you so much for hanging out. I remember when you got that sweater. Shout out to the random lady in the clothing store who enabled the purchase. Yeah. I was laughing. Like, I got this and there was a sweatshirt, sweatpants combo, for this Inuyasha thing. I'm not wearing the sweatpants right now because they are in the wash. But I was like, it'd be so funny if I got both of them. And, I was like, but it'd be kind of expensive. And the random lady that was shopping in the same thing was like, do it. You have to get both. It's so good. And I'm like, all right, random lady, you're right. I have to get both. Also, in case I was too cryptic, I also got my Crave the Loops. Yay! I'm so glad the Loops also arrived. Big mail day. Congratulations. Yay! But yeah, before I hop into the TED Talk, I just want to say thank you all so much for being here. John, Bill, Edgefit, Crizzy, Nico, Matt, Victor, Lemon, Odds, sorry, I burped, and Amity. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Thank you. Welcome on in. Random enablers, we love them. It was great. But yeah, so in order to take this TED Talk, I felt like I had to be in my weeb gear because I couldn't not talk about anime without showing to everyone, all of you, that I was a full weeb and therefore have credentials to talk about anime in an intellectual space. So I had to put on that air. But other than that, if you usually oh my gosh. Fun fact, we met in person at Gen Con 2023. I know you as Mushroom Lady. Oh, that's so sweet, Victor. Oh, I did not know that. I didn't recognize your screen handle. Oh, I do wear a full mushroom getup at Gen Con, so there you go. Thank you. I theme my outfits well. Oh, thank you, Victor. Thank you. That is an incredible compliment. I am huge into mushrooms. You can't tell right now, but usually I'm very mushroom core, very cottage core. So thank you. Thank you. But yeah, a few quick announcements before we hop in. The first of which is that Trash to Treasure is almost text complete. It's getting there, which means that we're gonna be launching our Kickstarter here very, very soon on October 15th. If you are interested at all in goblins and magical girls, please go follow the Trash to Treasure Kickstarter on Kickstarter. We are at 111 followers right now, and every day we're gonna be posting on Twitter new lore about the goblins. So check that out. Also, the reason that we're doing this stream today, this Dungeon Meshy Delicious in Dungeon TED Talk stream, is because you guys funded it. Thank you so much for doing that. And if you are interested at all in funding any more of my goals and supporting my creative endeavors, you can do so at my coffee shop. If we get to $150 before the end of September, I will be doing an art canvas swap collab, where every layer, me and a different artist swap back and forth to create a piece, and we'll see what the fuck happens. I don't know. How do styles vary in that way? It's gonna be a fun experiment. So please, please, please support me there. You can commission me. You can buy things from my store. You can become a member of my coffee sticker club, which this month's sticker is Libra. Every month I do a Goblin Zodiac, and this month is Libra. So go and check that out. Or you can just regular tip or donate at my coffee. But yeah. I don't think I have any other announcements. Oh, there. I had them over here and I totally forgot. The Gradient Pride Wing pins came in the mail. Look at them. They're beautiful. Look at them. They are big. They are gorgeous. And they'll be ready to put on all of your beautiful stuff. I'm very ready to be shipping these out. And anything that, any of my extras will be going up in my, woof. Brain gone. Coffee, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh boy, thank you guys. I just fully boy. They'll be available on my coffee for you guys to check out as well. I fully just gone. But yeah, go check these out very, very soon. I'll be sending them out and then I'll be putting them up on my coffee if you missed the pre-orders. So heck yeah. I have a bunch of different flags. I have 13 different flags. I have intersex, trans, ace, demi, poly, pan, inclusive, bi, non-binary, gender fluid, gay, lesbian, and arrow. I have a lot. Got a lot of them. 13 different individual designs. They're great. So, pre-iOS has stopped working. No room for promo, only done mesh and that knocking right now. I have been working on this presentation for every waking moment for the last 2 days. Because I procrastinated on it super hard. Because I was like, I have everything I want to say in my brain, but I don't know how to put it together. And then I was like, fuck, I have to do it. And I did it. So, it's here. Anyways. I also just want to say, for everyone that wants it to be super professional, I'm here, and I'm not super professional. But, I'm gonna do my best to make it as interesting, intellectual, and TED Talky as possible. Of course, if you have any questions about what this is, what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and anything in between, please, feel free to ask in chat. Or if you have any other anecdotes or things like that, I might not be able to, reply right away, because I'll kind of be going off. But, please talk in chat. There will be things that I forget. There will be things that you find interesting. There will be questions that you want answered. So please, put that in the chat, and I will do my best to get to them as importantly as possible. If if you have a question specifically, please put question in front of it so that my eye can see it, and that I can be like, oh, great, question. I will get to that first. I do have an emote that says I'm a professional, so that is true. But yeah, I didn't take any notes because it's been in my head for 2 days, so we're gonna see what happens. And yeah, so let's get started, shall we? Question: what is 5,808? I'm not even gonna try. I don't know. Math questions or something I cannot answer. Yep. Yeah, I can't answer math questions, but, yeah, without further ado, let's get to it. Let's get to it, everybody. I will see you on the other side. Hello, and welcome to Delicious in Dungeon, a masterclass in storytelling and food. I am your host, Brita Donnan. As you can see by my weeb attire, I know exactly what I'm talking about, and I'm very good at it. Do we need to make a only ask questions pertaining to the presentation / subject matter automated message? Because we will. I don't think so. But if you have a question specifically about the presentation or subject matter, make sure to preface it with a question. Because I will be prioritizing topic over other things. Because I need to get through this, because it's a very long presentation. Oh, I've seen this before. Yes, you have. Yes, you have. Welcome to Delicious in Dungeon. Set in, I will turn this car around energy. If you want to make a little thing that goes in chat, I would not say no to that. It was one of my favorite, I was like, there's literally only one person whose wife volunteered for a few hours at the booth in 23, and I know exactly who they are. Yes. We love Victor and Shadows Fall. Sorry, I've been reading it in the chat, I just haven't been able to connect, but it's lovely to see you in digital form. Anyways, okay. Let's get started, shall we? Welcome to Delicious in Dungeon. As you can see, this is an anime, all about food in a dungeon. It is very, very much based on, like, D&D and, like, fantasy isekai tropes, sort of with Lord of the Rings inspired. Like, it's more D&D inspired or, like, MMO dungeon inspired than it is, like, high fantasy inspired. So, keep that in mind, as we go through. But yeah, it's got, like, all the different kinds of monsters that you would know from D&D. Like a red dragon, or a slime, or a mimic, or things like that. It's very, very good. But, to start out, what this anime does, and what this series does really, really well, is a perfect setup. When it comes to storytelling, you really want to like, throw up the ball and get it ready to go. And this does it so well, because in the first literal minute of the show, we get an epic fight, a core premise / problem, and some main character motivation. It, like, immediately starts with a flaming battle of this dungeon party, fighting a red dragon. First second of the frickin' anime. This dragon, they come in, the dragon should be no problem for them, and then the main character, or at least who we assume the main character is at this point, basically kind of goes through why this fight is actually a problem for them. And it is mainly because they didn't eat properly. The main problem, slash core premise of the show is that they didn't eat properly. They lost 3 days of food with it from a trap they fell into. They didn't plan accordingly. They got lost. And they didn't prioritize their food and nutrition. And because of that, they're getting their ass fucking handed to them. Specifically, Laos, who is doing literally nothing in this fight, is just kind of standing around, sort of eyes glassy, because he's so hungry he can't fight. Anyways, we get a dragon battle, we have the core problem, and a main character motivation. They came all this way to fail? What the heck? Next thing that happens, within the next minute of the opening of the show, we get our first character death. First character death. Fallon fucking dies. She pushes her brother out of the way, who's Laos. This guy. This guy down here. She pushes him out of the way because he's about to get eaten by a red dragon. And she gets eaten instead. She's in the dragon's mouth, casts a teleportation spell on the entire party, and the last thing they know, she's fucking dead. And we go right into a beautiful scenery after that. Like, the first 2 minutes is an epic battle, and someone fucking dying. If that doesn't hook you, I don't know what is. It's the perfect setup. Next, we get a lovely, intro into how the world works. This first part of the presentation is going to be basically me telling you everything that happens in the first 10 minutes of the anime. And that should tell you everything you need to know about why this anime is good. Because it takes so much of, kind of just throwing you into a world, into a situation, and tells you what's happening through the lens of the characters in a way that feels natural and believable in the world. Rather than having, you follow characters that don't know anything about the world and you discover it through, through circumstance. These characters know everything, know a lot about the world. And they know how it works. They've experienced these things before, and, maybe not to this severity of a degree of his brother fucking dying in the dragon. But there's solutions to their problem. They know these things, and they're gonna tell you how to tell you what their fix is. Specifically, the first thing that they, kind of talk about is the fact that, by the time we figure this out, my sister will be digested. Meaning that the amount of time that she gets digested is a factor in resurrection time. And you can't come back from being chewed to pieces also clues us into the fact that in, D&D, resurrection is 100% on the table in this world. The death is not the finality that it is in a lot of other places. This also in this scene, how the world works scene, they also kind of tell us how the economy works in this adventuring world, getting enough cash to buy cheaper gear and food, medicine, daily essentials, more people in the party, because also people in their party bailed after they got teleported out. They just kind of fucked off. So in the first 3 minutes, we see the main problem, the premise of the show. The main problem being his sister dies. The premise of the show being she died because they weren't prepared for the fight, in the fact that they didn't eat food. And how they're going to fix this and how the world works is that they're going to try to resurrect her, but they can't try to resurrect her in a fast enough time if they rely on material goods, because since they were teleported out, they weren't able to bring any of their bags, any of their loot, or anything they got in the dungeon to give them monetary value. They're kind of penniless at this point. So we kind of get both a glimpse in the magical economy and the actual economy of adventures in the very beginning. The next thing that happens is they're walking through the town, And after deciding that they are going to try to resurrect and go back into the dungeon, to save Fallon, we immediately get the re-solidifying the premise. And as you can see, based on the Netflix bar that I took a screenshot from here, we're not even 10 minutes in. We're already re-solidifying the premise of the show. We are not even taking a second to breathe. We're just going right into it. And we know exactly what this show is all about. We're going to get all of our food from the dungeon. Instead of buying it, bringing rations, buying extra anything, they're going in penniless and surviving off of the dungeon. Because they have nothing. And they need to get to Fallon as fast as they can. And the way to do that is to survive off the dungeon. Can't breathe because there's no air in the dragon's maw. Nope. Because, and we learn this later we learn a lot more about resurrection later on in the show and as things go. But resurrection is very much like a core tenet of a very important piece of lore in this world. And they tell us about it early on in the thing, because the problem is that Fallon's dead. Easy to understand, easy to get, and it feels like it's an incredibly rich world already. Next is we get early world building. Again, this is all within the first 10 minutes. We learn a lot about throughout Dungeon Meshi and Delicious in Dungeon. We learn a lot about the ecosystem of the dungeon, of monsters, of everything through the lens of cooking. But also, they already, like, in the very beginning of the anime, kind of lay it out for you as, like, sort of a hypothesis and a theory. Like, this has never been tested in the adventuring universe. People just go in and adventure and then come out with loot. But in this anime, this is, like, a brand new premise that Laios is suggesting, that that the dungeon must have an ecosystem in it. That, like, there is carnivorous monsters that eat monsters that are herbivores, and the herbivorous monsters eat plants, and so on and so forth. There is clearly a pyramid of digestive hierarchy, with presumably the red dragon on top. Like, we've got carnivores, herbivores, plants, bugs, things like that all kind of eat down to be able to survive. And if the dungeon has an ecosystem, then why couldn't humans and humanoids be a part of the ecosystem either? Like, why is no one, like, thinking about this? Because it's clear that, like, the dragon just ate a person. So therefore, the things in the monsters in the dungeon must eat. Therefore, there must be an ecosystem. But this beautiful ecosystem also brings us into our immediate knowledge of our main character's character foil, which is that he loves monsters. And the two other characters that we've been seeing, Marcel and Chilchuk, who we will get to, are throughout this, like, first 10 minutes, I was, like, constantly, like, berating and, like, being bewildered at Laios, who wants to survive off of monsters, because monsters are otherworldly and gross and, like, possibly sentient? Question mark? But we learned for a fact that the other core tenet of Laios' personality is that he loves monsters. That is his character foil. Not only is his motivation is to save his sister, and to not fail in doing so, but his also other more selfish character motivation, his hope, his love, is monsters. Knowing monsters, researching monsters, eating monsters, everything that he can learn about monsters through any facet, that is what he will go for. And that is also an immediate character foil that we learn. So, like, to recap, we've got premise, re-solidifying premise, casual world building in both economics, magic, and ecosystem of, like, dungeon culture and of the dungeon. Character foil, and a huge important huge important pillar of motivation for all of the characters. We get all of that really quickly into the anime in a very natural, very obvious, like, this is the kind of anime that this is the story of the anime, like, right off the bat. And I think that is incredible storytelling, because a lot of the time in fantasy works, authors and people will they won't let you just jump right in. They will kind of weave a tale of history at you before you are allowed to engage in the world. And that's not always the case, but it is the case in a lot of ways. Or, like, other fantasy anime, like isekais, they will tell you this big, like, world lore, and then insert a character that knows nothing about the world, or knows everything about the world, but also nothing about the world because they read it in a book or whatever, and will then have to, act as both a god and also, act as both an omniscient god and someone that is completely clueless, to allow the readers to feel a sense of both satisfaction and intrigue, which I'm not batting on isekai. That is an interesting way to set it up. But this kind of follows a more, like, narrative-focused, character-driven sort of way of storytelling that I really enjoy, where it kind of just drops you in and explains things to you as a reader or watcher that allows you to kind of understand both where the characters are coming from and also what this world at least feels like. And they do it so quickly, so succinctly. Again, it's not even done with the first 10 minutes. The next thing we learn about is kind of how the structure of the anime goes. So this is, we're kind of getting at the 10-minute mark. We introduce our fourth character, Senji, and we learn a little bit about kind of the pacing of the anime, which is also a really good, important thing, especially in episodic work, like manga and anime or like TV shows, kind of showing you the format and formula that they're going to be presenting the topic and their story at you. And again, it does it very, like, until you see it, you can't see how smoothly it works, but, like, it all, like, follows a sense of logic. Like, the setup is, they lose the fight because they're hungry. Fallon dies, and saves everyone. Because of money, they can't go immediately save Fallon, and they also need to eat in order to go and save Fallon, or else they're gonna die. Therefore, the best thing they can do is eat food out of the dungeon because they need to quickly go and save Fallon. And in order to do that, they need to understand the world of the dungeon and the ecosystem of the dungeon and how you can cook and eat in the dungeon. And that is where Senshi comes in. Senshi teaches them all about cooking in the dungeon. Senshi, for somehow, knows everything there seems to be known about the ecosystem and how food is cooked and how monsters are cooked. Weird. But how we kind of go through that is like kind of classic cooking anime, or like, well, it will basically be like, all right, or like cooking tutorial, I guess, where it'll like tell you like how to like cut the mushroom off, like lose the butt and the outer skin, cut off the feet, cut up the mushroom, boil the scorpion, how to cut the scorpion, where the organs are in an ooze so that you know how to kill an ooze, and therefore how you wash the ooze and splash it with citrus juice so you can make ooze like food, and like it's a cooking tutorial about monsters. That's the setup, that's the pacing, that's kind of how the anime episodically works. And it is so interesting. I just gotta say, it is so interesting. As someone that routinely talks about and loves anthropology and ecology and ecosystems, seeing a world that is so founded in D&D logic and using that in a way that like allows for incredibly detailed necessary needs of like where organs are in the slimes and how mushrooms walk and like how in what way scorpions could be cooked. Like there's a scene in this like cooking tutorial that Senshi is giving them where he like pulls out the like innards and like poop tube of the scorpion like one would do in like shrimp or lobster, and it just seems like so obvious. Like the person that is writing this story clearly knows how food is prepared and is applying all of that prepared knowledge into fantasy creatures, and I find that fascinating. But we can get into that later. This part of the episode of episode 1 is kind of telling us all about the pacing of the show. The next thing that we learn kind of throughout the next few episodes is all about the characters. So we kind of talked about it a little bit about Laios. He is our main character. Laios is a tall man. He loves monsters, loves food, is very mostly silly, like a lot of good, well, not a lot of good. You'd think in this kind of anime where it starts with his sister being immediately consumed by a dragon, he would be very serious, and he kind of is, but he's serious in a way that you don't take him seriously, which is an absolutely incredible characterization. Like, you're not intimidated by him. You find him strange, but you also know that he really does care about his sister. And he's, like, already in, like, how you kind of, like, see him in the first episode of this anime, you kind of see just how complex of a character he is with how he interacts with things. Idiot savant for the win. Exactly. He's an idiot savant. But he also has a jarring, serious side. Like, before they enter into the dungeon, he makes sure to double and triple check with both Marcel and Chilchuk that they are okay with going back in the dungeon. Because Laos is going to go back in the dungeon no matter what. He is going to go save his sister. He is going to go with no food, no water, nothing, just whatever he can get on his back and his armor, and his sword. And he's going to go in and survive off the dungeon by himself. Marcel and Chilchuk say that they're going to come and help him, and he double and triple checks like, hey, this is going to be hard. And he makes sure that they are aware of that reality, which I think is very cool. He also wants to resurrect his sister. Is like the very like obvious important character motivator. He is also autistic coded, which is Tumblr prescribed. I prescribed to this theory as well, because the way that he likes monsters is a very, very specific. He likes them in a very specific way, and a lot of autistic people see themselves in him, which is really cool. But I don't want to be on the record saying he is or isn't, because the author hasn't said so or not. But according to Tumblr, he's autistic coded. So if that makes you excited, there you go. He's also, in terms of D&D, he is a tall man, or a human or tall man. Tall man is what they call them in the Delicious in Dungeon universe, and he is a fighter. You know, he's a basic boy. He's a basic boy. Our next character is Marcel. Now I'm gonna take a big drink of water before we get into her. Okay, Marcel. So, in D&D terms, she is a wizard and an elf. She is kind of, like, if you watch a lot of anime, that has fantasy elements. She will kind of remind you of a kind of a happy-go-lucky sort of elf with like a lot of big emotions and a lot of like interest in specific things and a lot of disgust in a lot of things. She kind of like in the early episodes has a lot of like, she has a lot of big emotions, I guess is the best way for me to put it. But she also hates eating monsters. She realizes that it is necessary and she will do it. Mainly because Senshi is an incredibly good cook. And in the first few, first episode, she kind of like warms up to the idea because Senshi is an incredible cook and knows how to prepare monster food. Like, he knows everything when it comes to like, we'll get to Senshi. But anyways, she hates eating monsters, and for the first like few episodes, she puts up a big stink about eating monsters for quite a while. It gets better. But it's the core part of the comedic relief in the first few episodes is her and Chilchuck versus Senshi and Laios in terms of eating monsters. And I find it a very fun dynamic. Also, she's Fallon's best friend and girlfriend. Again, that is not canon, but it might as well be. And you'll understand why later. We'll get to that. We'll get to their relationship later, but her big motivation, as we understand it at the top of the story, is that she wants to save Fallon, just like Laios. But she is Fallon's best friend, whereas Laios is Fallon's brother. She is Fallon's best friend. Then she's known Fallon for a very, very long time, and she takes loyalty seriously, which is a very important early characteristic to note in Marcel. Where a lot of their party members at the very beginning of the anime, when they were just oh, which term is offensive, Matt? Savant syndrome is the new term. Oh, I didn't even realize that that was an actual, like, term. I just thought that was a thing that EduFit made up. Just to clarify, the term is offensive because of its association to autism, not to heart or distract from the topic. Interesting. Okay. Interesting. No worries. I think that's a very important clarification. I didn't even realize that idiot savant was a term, like an actual term. I just thought that was a thing that he just said. But savant syndrome, good to know. Good to know that that's actually a term that is the correct term in that specific scenario. The term I use has been widely used in the past, but I didn't realize it was an offensive term. My bad. Thanks for the info. Hey, we learn and grow here. We learn and grow. I hadn't heard of either term, so good to know. Good to learn. Cool. Okay. Anyways, where was I? Right, Marcel. She takes loyalty very seriously. So, like, when they get, like, transported out, a lot of their party members leave. The two party members that didn't, they had three other party members. One of them was Fallon, who got eaten by a dragon. The other two left. Shuro and I can't remember her name, but she was a dwarf woman, left. And Marcel takes this very, very personally. Very, very personally, because she takes loyalty very seriously. She basically, like, we kind of get into it a little bit later, but she became an adventurer because of Fallon, and became friends with Laios and Fallon because of her deep friendship with Fallon when they were at school, and is very, very attached to Laios and Fallon because they're her, like, best friends. And takes that loyalty and that connection of companionship very, very seriously. And this is something that you should keep in mind about her character as we progress through this presentation, because it is both her strength and her foil. It's a big one. It's a big one. Next is Chilchuck. Chilchuck is a halfling, or halfling, who is a locksmith. They say specifically locksmith instead of rogue because he cannot fight. A lot of this big thing about this anime that I also really enjoy is that while they do have a lot of fight scenes, it is more about solving puzzles than it is about fighting. Like, a lot of the puzzles that they solve is in result or, like, through combat, but it is usually about how to best kill a monster as to preserve it for food, or how to best traverse through the dungeon, which is both something that Chilchuck has a very good, understanding of. He has a very, very good understanding of it. And, that is kind of a really core part of his, connection to the group, is, that, while he can't fight, he does a lot of, food prep work, and, dicing and slicing in a really, precise way, as well as, finding traps and allowing them to get through the dungeon in a way that doesn't kill them. And that's kind of who he is. But other important parts of his character is that he has a very sarcastic dad sort of personality, and is constantly mistaken for a child. That is also, the constantly mistaken for a child is early, Delicious in Dungeon, episode comic relief as well, where instead of, it kind of, because they use it in a way, to kind of, show Senshi, Senshi and, Marcel kind of mistaking him for more childlike, is because he, is a half-foot, and half-foots have a shorter lifespan than dwarves and elves. And so they kind of view him they don't really know where he is in the developmental cycle, so they thought he was younger than he is. And it's both a comic relief and a really important, turning point, and I think in their group's dynamic, when they do find out that he is, in fact, a father. He is, 29 years old and has 3 kids. It's a very important, part of his character, I think, to keep in mind as well. Sarcastic teen or grumpy old man? Who could tell? Important addition, he need money. That is also true. He does need money. He does in fact need money so he can, send money back to his wife and kids back home. Which is a part of the reason why he is here. But the other part of the reason, that he joined the mission, while he doesn't have a lot of, personal connection with, Laos and Marcel, he, still views, in sort of a dad way, still views himself as the one to keep them from dying. He also takes loyalty seriously, but he also needs money, and it is faster for him to help them in their quest than go and find another adventuring party for him to get money from. So, but also, he also doesn't want them to die, because he has been in their adventuring party for a while and views himself as a father figure, whereas they don't. And he's also not jazzed about eating monsters. Not very jazzed about eating monsters. He's a very complex character that I don't think gets as much screen time, because he's very simple. He also kind of tells you exactly what he wants and his, boundaries. He's a pretty simple character, all things considered. Both him and Izumi. But we'll get to Izumi later. Oh, the last character at the very beginning is Senshi. Our lovely dwarf, cook. He is a cook. That is his main thing. He is a cook. If you could have a class in D&D be cook, he would be the cook. He might be a fighter too. He's got like fighter barbarian tendencies when it comes to like fighting, but he more cares about simplicity and hunting than he does trying like brute forcing a combat problem. He is a dwarf, as you could probably see from that luxurious beard. He also has a weird amount of knowledge about the dungeon, something that they call out in the early episode, in early episode 1, but don't really like expand on. And I want everyone to keep that in mind, that he has a weird amount of knowledge about the dungeon. He also seems to live on the 4th level. He kind of like tells them that he doesn't really like leave the dungeon very much, and kind of stays more on the upper levels and like lives there, and only goes out to the town to like get spices and stuff. So he's like dungeon ecosystem expert. Dungeon ecosystem expert. He loves food. He is a connoisseur of monster cuisine. He knows everything about like what upper level food tastes good. He knows scorpions. He knows living mushrooms. He knows golems. He knows how to make bread. That has nothing to do with monsters, but he loves bread. He knows everything about cockatrices and poisonous flora and fauna and all different kinds of things. Yeah, mandrake. There's a lot. He knows a lot about food, and also like corpse flowers and things like that. Anything that you would think would be like, ew, that's kind of not great. He knows a lot about it and knows how to cook it into delicious food. I need a fantasy cookbook of all of his creations. Toot sweet. He also, another thing about food is that he really, really cares a lot about nutrition and a balanced meal. Not only is he like just cooking for cooking's sake, he also cooks to make sure that him and his adventuring friends get the nutrition they need in order to traverse the dungeon well. Like, there is a lot of talk in the early episodes of like how to balance your meal correctly, how to prioritize what food when it comes to what you're craving, how often to like eat proteins and vegetables and different kinds of meats and things like that, and how to like help you through sort of prioritizing nutrition to minimize the impact of adventure and physical exertion and poison and monsters and things like that on your body. It's really, 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 really important. Like, nutrition is huge important to Senshi, and is also one of the main reasons why this adventuring party is successful in the dungeon, with catching and eating their food like every day. So you've sold me on this show. Great! I'm glad. I'm not even halfway through the presentation. He also, his motivation for joining the party is to introduce them to the beauty of the dungeon's ecosystem. When he learns that they are interested in eating monsters, he feels so excited that there are other people interested in the dungeon ecosystem and living his lifestyle, that he wants to help them through it. He becomes sort of a de facto like guide to them to help their goals. Like, he will take them through the dungeon, help them sort of mitigate disaster, teach them about nutrition, teach them about the dungeon levels while they try to go save Fallon. He is great. He is incredible. He is my favorite character in the show, mainly because he has opened my, like, everyone who watches this show and sees Senshi is like, he's opened my eyes to nutrition in a way that no college course could ever give me. It's great. But yeah, those are our characters. That is sort of the really kind of verbose premise of the show. Next, in review, before we go any further, a lot of this show is eat or be eaten. There's no hierarchy to it. Just the reality that to eat is the privilege of the living. And oh, dungeon food. But yeah, no, it's great. It's a fucking great show. This, I'm sure as you could tell, this show is all about food. In very interesting and intriguing ways. Next is the journey. We've gotten past episode 1. Yay! I wanted to put a lot of stink on episode 1, and specifically the first 10 minutes of episode 1, because I think that it gives it such an important and breathtaking intro into the show, and really shows you how the show is going to feel, what the show is going to be about, what the storyline is, and what the important concepts that you need to know about the show are before going into it. I think the first 10 minutes of the show, and everything you learn about the characters, everything you learn about the world, everything you learn about the economy and magic and how things work, it just is an expert storytelling model. Personally, I think it is a perfect first 10 minutes of a show that'll get you hooked instantly. But the rest of the show is also really, really good. There's the whole journey. After the first episode, the rest of it is just the whole journey down into the depths where they're gonna go find Fallon. And the journey kind of takes a similar sort of structure, because basically the episode is like, discuss what to eat, fight a monster, eat. Very much, we find, they talk about food that they want to eat, or the things that they're craving, the nutrition about that, and then they have a combat sequence, where they solve what that monster is like, what that monster does, how to kill that monster, and how they eat that monster. And then, they eat it. And talk about, and then kind of have character moments while they eat. As you can kind of see. These are all different, pictures from different episodes. This is from episode 2, episode 3, and episode 4, I think? I can't remember exactly. But I will say that this episode, one of my favorites. This puzzle is one of the best monsters in the show. The living armor is one of the best monsters in the show. And I don't want to spoil as to why, but it is. You will think it is fucking genius. How they turned armor into food. It's really cool. The living armor is fucking sick. But yeah, so they talk about the food, they solve the puzzle of the food, and then they eat. Sometimes by themselves, sometimes with NPCs. They find along the way. Also, throughout the journey of them going down to save Fallon, through the discuss with eat, fight a monster, eat sort of pattern of the episodes, there's also strewn in backstory, character conflicts, new biomes to discover, and new ecosystems to talk about and engage with, as well as more and more side characters. Yes, I will agree with that as well, Nico. Episode structure is extremely reminiscent of TTRPG sessions. Very, very reminiscent of TTRPG sessions. Where it's like, plan, execute, chill, and have character moments. There are sometimes, when the backstory, a lot of the backstory either happens at the beginning of the episode or at the end of the episode, kind of tying to that specific monster. Like this, I'm showing you on the screen, is Laos's first death in the dungeon, which also helps us to reiterate that resurrection is 100% possible. His first death in the dungeon is to the living armor, and which kind of makes the living armor episode really, really interesting, because it gives you a little bit of backstory and kind of shows you Laos's, like, personal growth from his first adventuring days until now. There's also a lot of character conflict, not ones that are detrimental, but, like, ones where they're still kind of obviously trying to figure each other out and kind of work well together. Specifically between Senshi and Chilchuck. But there's also between Laos and Marcel and Laos and Senshi and all of the different, different kind of character dynamics sort of testing each other out. These are people, the three of them had been adventuring together for a very long time, but this is a very stressful mission, and Senshi is a brand new addition to their party. So, character conflict is normal, and it really, really kind of speaks to how seamless the episode transitions are. Like, the conflicts are around, like, the core concepts of the show as well. Like, it either around how they get their food, where they get their food, why they get their food, all that stuff. A lot of the conflicts are specifically about how they consume, or what they consume and why. The one that I have here is a little less about food one, but a little bit more about Chilchuck's personal conflict with himself. Is Senshi not really taking Chilchuck's job in the group seriously, as he is the locksmith, and Senshi just kind of barrels through things and kind of takes it because he's a dwarf, but Chilchuck is a half-foot and is very squishy, and kind of their sort of dynamic there. It's really interesting. I need to remember to breathe. Throughout the episodes, there's new biomes and side characters. I won't get a whole lot into that, because, like, the new biomes is basically just sort of reiterating how that specific floor of the dungeon's ecosystem works, which is really interesting to learn about, but is very similar to kind of, like, the pattern of discussion that was at the start of the beginning of the anime. And the side characters, while very cool, don't seem relevant at this current moment in the anime. They just seem like kind of a flavor piece to kind of show that the world is bigger than it is. But we all know that they're coming back and really important later. But we'll get to that. But it kind of shows you sort of there is more going on. It's not just a Monster of the Week sort of show. It has that structure, and it uses that structure to tell a very complex, intricate, and very personal story to each of the characters. Next, my favorite part of the show is also through this journey down into Save Fallon. We get a little hint of something deeper, something a little less about just the structure of the show and about the characters themselves. We get a little bit of more world stuff. Like, yes, we know that the resurrection is possible. Yes, we know that there is, like, a whole, like, economy of adventurers. Yes, we know that they go out and live in the dungeon. But they kind of start, like, talking about it in a way that no one ever really talks about dungeons in D&D. Like, early on in the second episode, they talk a lot about the Golden Castle. And the Golden Castle is the dungeon itself. As you can see kind of in my little graphic here, is that it's basically, the tallest spire of the tower is where they start, and they go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into the castle, where the bottom of the castle is where, presumably, the Lord of the Dungeon is. And we can kind of see, like, all of the different biomes, where, like, the first one is, like, that canopy place where they start out. Well, actually, the first place is the crypts, and then after that is the canopy, and then after that is sort of this, like, the inside of the castle area where they meet the orcs, and then below that is basically an ocean biome. And it's a descending sort of biome structure in a castle that is titled but we don't know why it's here yet. We also kind of figure out that a little thing about the resurrection is that the reason resurrection is possible is that it's only possible in the dungeon. It is only possible below the surface of the earth. And that is because it seems to, the dungeon somehow seems to shackle people's souls to their body. Like, they don't, the soul doesn't leave to go somewhere else. They just linger in the dungeon. And if they linger in the dungeon, that means that it'll be super easy to kind of just reconnect them back together. Which is a crazy concept, because we learned that resurrection is not possible outside of the dungeon. And it's only possible in this dungeon. We also learn that the dungeon already somehow seems to include humanoids into the dungeon's ecosystem, where we previously only thought, earlier in the anime with Senji kind of giving us this sort of explanation, is that it was previously only thought that the dungeon had its own ecosystem, and people were kind of coming in and disrupting it. And Senshi wanted more people to be a part of the economic ecosystem structure, which is why he was so excited about Laos and his party wanting to do that. But Senshi kind of learns that by his encounter with a Kelpie, that the dungeon already kind of includes humanoids and adventurers into its ecosystem. Which makes a lot of sense, because the dragon fucking ate Fallon. The dragon wouldn't do that if that wasn't a source of actual nutrients to the dragon. So, the dungeon already has adventurers as a part of its ecosystem. Which kind of means that the dungeon isn't separate from the world above. It's just, it's something else. It's something extra. There's something deeper here that there's something deeper here. If you think about it too much, you'll get too crazy. Yes, specifically, it's only possible if you died in the dungeon. If you die outside the dungeon and bring it back into the dungeon, it doesn't work. And we get a little hint of outside politics as well throughout this, is that there is apparently a world leader organization of elves that somehow go around and claim dungeons and basically tell people, hey, your dungeon is getting too scary. It belongs to us now, and we are going to destroy it. And for a lot of reasons, economically, people don't like this. So there's this, other kind of, organization, but also politics of the outside world that also somehow has to do with the dungeon. But, we don't know why. It just, there's something else going on here. There's something else going on here. But the thing about the early episodes of Delicious in Dungeons is they, don't, harp on it. They sometimes go that's weird. Anyways, food. And I'm like, no. Tell me more about this. What is going on? Question. So less of a separate thing from the outside world and more like it's connected. It seems to be the case. It seems to be the case that it seemed to either originate from the outside world, or it was made and then sealed away. That's sort of what I'm getting from this, is that it's connected, but separate, but connected. I know the answer, obviously, but at this point in the anime, you're kind of there's something here. There's something here, and I don't quite know what to put my finger on. And we're gonna get to another thing that made me get out my cork board. This motherfucker. There's a whole episode dedicated to this motherfucker. This guy. There's one episode in Delicious in Dungeon, where Laos gets really into trying to eat the food in living paintings. You can... Yes, people that finished the first season also know. That is true. But there's one episode where Laos gets really, really into trying to eat the food in living paintings. And so living paintings are a monster that suck you in, and you basically don't know how to get out. And you're just kind of stuck in this living painting. Thank you for the hydrate. Hold on. You're basically stuck in this living painting. And so Laos comes up with this thing where he ties a rope to himself and then jumps in, and the other people are supposed to pull him out, and he's gonna eat a bunch of the pretty food to see if he can, like, see if you can eat the living painting in this weird way of him, like, I gotta try to see if I can eat something out of this monster. And while he is going through the living painting, he is sort of living through what can only be described as the past. He gets thrown into scenes that he doesn't quite understand of, like, a king and a baby being born and a coronation and, like, a murder and a bunch of different stuff. And he doesn't know what's going on because he's just trying to eat the food at all of these things. And people are looking at him weird. But specifically, this person is looking at him weird. And we don't really get a confrontation between the two of them until, like, the end of the episode, where this person comes up to him, grabs him by the collar, and says, "What are you doing here, outsider? I remember you were here when the prince was born and his wedding." Which shouldn't be possible because it's just a painting, right? But this person in the painting somehow knows that Laos is out of place. And we don't get anything from it for a bit. This just kind of happens. He gets pulled out of the painting. He goes, "That was unsettling. Anyways, I'm still hungry. We gotta find other food." And they move on. And this fucked me up for a few days. I say a few days. It didn't fuck me up for a few days. I needed answers immediately, which is why I binged the whole thing. But, like, who is this person? Who are they? How do they know who Laos is? Kinda. How do they track all of these weird events? How do they know that he's an outsider? Other than him wearing weird armor. Like, none of the other painting people had... I will also say, none of the other painting people had pupils. This guy has pupils. What's going on here? Anyways, that's a hint of something deeper that they kind of sprinkle throughout. Yeah, they just kind of sprinkle that throughout and then they move on. Anyways, we've talked a lot about, the plot and, the other things that make me crazy. Let's talk a little bit about the food. I said that, this was a masterclass in storytelling, and food. As much as I love talking about storytelling and, getting into the nitty-gritty and making a corkboard, which I will do, don't you worry, we gotta talk a quick little bit about food. We gotta talk a little bit about food, because food in this anime is the core, essential hook. Everything that is peripherally related in terms of, like, core concepts relate back to the food. So we gotta talk about the food. Why is this anime also really, really good at food? Well, I'll tell you. Anime food. I mean, look at it. You've seen food in Ghibli, you've seen food in Food Wars. They somehow know, anime people somehow know to render food in a way that makes things that I've never seen in the real world look the most delicious. I mean, the top one is just bread. I will say the top one is just bread. But the other ones, that's a freaking, like, cockatrice omelet We've got stewed mimic. Mimic in this universe is a crab, and I think it's really cool. And we also have this thing called exorcism sorbet to drive away evils. The sorbet is made out of water, or out of holy water, that they killed ghosts with. And they swung it around a whole bunch and killed the ghosts with the holy water in a jar. And because they did that, the holy water turned into sorbet. Fucking genius. Fucking genius. Also, all the things on top of it are treasure bugs that taste like candy. So, like, anybody that's ever wanted to eat dice, this anime lets you. I mean, I don't know what else to say here. Freaking masterclass. Secondly, the food is also a huge part of the storytelling and world building of the world. I've talked a lot about the ecosystem already, but as we've talked about already, like, there's the ecosystem of the dungeon. That is, like, the main core tenet of how they are surviving in the dungeon. The food is the plot, or the background element of survival in their world. Where not only does it look delicious, it also serves a plot-specific purpose. It also, why the food and the ecosystem coexist specifically in this anime. I mean, like, a lot of time when we think of food, we think of, oh, we're trying to have, like, a meal, we're trying to make something delicious, and good for us to eat. We don't really think a lot about where it came from, how it came from, how the animal lived, why it did the things that it did, and things like that. And unlike in the real world, where a lot of the things we eat are, like, inanimate and plants and mushrooms and things, where we can't really understand why they do what they do, this is Mimic. That was Mimic. Matt. That was Mimic. We don't really kind of go into that a lot, especially in our sort of late-stage capitalism, buy everything from the grocery store sort of life. But this show really ties food and the delicious of the delicious in dungeon with the dungeon, which is the ecosystem. Food is the delicious, dungeon is the ecosystem. Put it together, you get the anime. And, like, we kind of get the first look of that when Senshi kind of describes the organs of the slime and how they are arranged to show kind of how you kill it and prepare it. We also get that with the living armor, where they realize that the armor is actually a creature because it is trying so hard to protect its shield, and what is on its shield is an egg sac. That is an animal protecting its young, which is super interesting because up until this point in the anime, that point in the anime, most people had thought that living armor is just like poltergeists or ghosts. But it turns out that living armor is like muscles in the armor, in the chinks of the armor, and they like grow together to be able to move around and be a colony. And then they have an egg sac that they put together and guard, and then the eggs go into another set of armor, and then that becomes a set of living armor. It's amazing, and the food is like a huge part of it. Like, this is like living armor, like stew and food, as you can see in the diagram, that it's of the torso and the hand of the mollusk that they're eating. But it also kind of like really shows that there is life in this dungeon. It's not just a obstacle that adventurers use to get money. It's truly its own way of living. And this is also shown as well when a lot of like animals in the or like monsters in the dungeon are like equated to other animals on the surface, like the kraken that they kill, that they kind of kill they kill the kraken in a way that you would kill an octopus or squid. And like they were having such a hard time fighting the kraken, but once you kind of understand where it comes from in the food chain and like what kind of creature it is, and like where its organs are in the body, you can more easily hunt and prepare it. And I think that is really, really interesting. Also, they ask a lot of big fantasy questions with food. Like, we all know the questions, like, with Pokemon, like, what Pokemon would taste the best, what do Pokemon taste like, what is the ethicality of eating, like, certain half-sentient things, like, how much are mermaids fish, how much are they people, things like that. We always, like, maybe it doesn't come up a lot for you, but it comes up a lot for me, and I think it's really cool that they, like, address these ethical food fantasy concerns in the anime, where, like, there's this whole, they address it a lot, but this is, like, one of those parts in the anime that really stands out to me, is that, they agree to not eat any demi-humans, but Laos is basically like, how do we know what is human and what is not human? Really? Like, these fish people are mostly fish, they just have arms, but they don't have any nipples, they don't have any, like, mammal types at all, and, like, so why is a cow okay and not this fish person? Because, like, they're very far away from mammals in general. And I find that really, really interesting. And there's, like, they don't come up with a answer to the question, but they posit the question. They don't answer the question, is a demi-human sentient? They don't say yes or no. They just posit, where on this debate would you stand morally, and why? Personally. Yeah, where's the cutoff between demi-human and monster? Do they even have sentience? Are they even, like, have a culture? We don't know. But they clearly are not mammals. They clearly are fish. So, like, where is the cutoff for, what to eat and what not to eat? And we found out, at least, Laos kind of, nudged the issue, by, introducing the seaweed that grows off of the fishman's head, and apparently their eggs, into a food that they ate. Whereas Chilchik gave him permission to eat the seaweed off of the fishman's heads, he didn't necessarily give him permission to eat the eggs. But Laos didn't take the eggs off, and he wanted to kind of just experiment to see if they would taste good, because it's just an experiment. And how they kind of, like, brush past this moral issue is, did it taste good? Yeah. Well, fuck it, we're trying to survive, I guess. Oh, well. So, like, they don't answer the moral question, they just posit the question. And I find it really interesting that they don't answer it, because it's like, anyone can have a different opinion, and there's not enough to know. Like, they can't communicate with these people. And for all they know, that the dungeon is different than the surface. But also, like, how different is it? It's all such a, like, interesting and weird, like, thing. Like, at what point is it cannibalism-ish? And at what point is it not? What point is it eating sentient people? What point is it not? What point is it, like, eating eggs of a sentient creature? Like, there's a lot of gray area here, but when you're dealing with monsters, who knows? Who knows? Oh, I missed something. And the next thing, the last thing that I find really, really important, especially to the setting of the Delicious in Dungeon sort of, like, world, is the connection between magic, healing, and food. They talk a lot about nutrition, as I've talked about a little bit earlier, but, like, one of the main things is, there's one whole episode, basically, where Marcel gets absolutely fucking wrecked by an Undine, and, loses a lot of blood and all of her mana. And in order to, like, save her from that, they find both food that is both nutritious for losing blood without healing magic, as well as food that is nutritious for mana, which is the wizard's ability. Like, everyone kind of has mana, but wizards use it to kind of replenish themselves and cast spells. in this world. And so they, like, if you're losing health, eat iron-rich food. If you're losing mana, drink spirit water. Like, there is a solution for both things. And I think that it's so interesting that to fix mana problems is very similar to fixing like health and healing problems. Because like you could technically use a healing spell or a resurrection spell or whatever to heal her instantly, but they didn't have any healers with them. Fallon was their healer. And Marcel's kind of their healer now, but she's not very good at it. And Laos is kind of trying to learn, but like the only thing that they have to be able to recover themselves is food. And so, like, using that in a way that a lot of people use, like, food now when you're sick, but finding those important things in the dungeon and knowing what different creatures, what spirits have intrinsic mana, and then using that to replenish one's own mana is really, really interesting, I find. And it just kind of continues to go to show that, like, there is a very established fantasy ecosystem here. And nothing is, like, outside of it. Like, a lot of time, people are like, oh, magic's just magic. Magic's just extra. Magic comes from a different dimension. Magic's just extra and magic. But, in here, in Delicious in Dungeon, magic is a part of the way the world works. Without it, the world wouldn't work the same way. And explaining magic as a part of how certain spirits work, how certain monsters work, how certain people work, it's just another part of flesh and blood and soul and spirit. Like, those are all facets of the ecosystem that work together. And it's fucking rad. It's fucking rad. Like, if you know anything about me, and how much I rant about how I would like to have a world that is, like, anthropologically accurate to magic and D&D and stuff, like, this does it. This does it, and it makes my brain happy. It's so interesting. It's so cool. More water. But now that we've kind of gone over why I think the storytelling is really good in this anime, and why I think the storytelling through food is really, really good, let's talk about the fact that at this point, I've gone up until about episode 10. We're at about episode 10, and why does it feel like we're getting towards the main goal of the anime pretty fast? Why does it feel like this? There's so many more things that they just brush. There's so much lore stuff that they just freaking brush past. They just brush past all of this lore stuff, and they get, well, a lot of the, like, world building is super cool with, like, food and things, and I think it's really cool, but, like, who is this purple-eyed person in the painting? What is this dungeon? How does it work? Why are souls tethered to each other, to their bodies? What's going on here? And why does it feel like we're getting to the Red Dragon really quickly? Like, if the whole premise of the anime is to save Fallon, why are we at the Red Dragon at episode 10? What the heck is going on? What the heck is going on? Oh. Hello there. Hello there, sir. I didn't mean to startle you. Please, oh, Jesus fucking Christ, what? Fallon's fucking dead? Like, fully dead? Are you kidding me right now? She's fucking dead? But, like, that's her skull in her brother's hands. Like, right now. What? Marcel, what are you fucking talking about? What are you fucking talking about? What are you saying? What? Why have you never said that you know what ancient magic is? Why are you full of blood? What is going on? Oh, why are you talking about a large amount of fresh meat? What are we doing here? What are we doing here? What's happening? Oh my fucking god! What? What? Excuse me. Why is there a Why are we making Fallon's body out of the dragon? What the fuck? What the absolute fuck is happening right here? What are you doing? I mean, I gotta say, it looks really fucking cool, but I'm disturbed. Marcel, why do you know black magic? What, oh, well that's nice. Oh, well that's nice. That's nice, though. I like that very much. I don't like this, though. I don't like this, though. I don't. I simply don't. I simply don't. Hey, remember that person from the painting? Hey, remember that person from the painting? Remember what they did? What do you mean that, Fallon is supposed to search for his majesty, huh? What are you, excuse me, what do you mean you don't allow them to rest? Your dragon's fucking dead. Why are you talking to Fallon? Why is Fallon walking over to you in a trance? What's happening? Huh? Who's Lord Delgal? Who's Lord Delgal? And why are you out of a painting? Why are you in the ribs of a dragon? What's happening? What's going on? Oh. Okay. So that's fun. 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 We like this. We like this. We like that, Marcel just randomly, has been keeping it a secret that she knows how to do black magic, and then resurrected Fallon, and then resurrected Fallon using, all of the meat from a dragon. I like that they had a little bit of a gay moment. Love that. That's the only good part that's happened here. But they had a little bit of gay moment. They're definitely girlfriends. This is definitely canon. And like, and I love that, apparently, turning Fallon into a person with the red dragon meat is a whole, like, thing. And I'm glad it worked. Except the fact that it seems like, it didn't work, actually didn't work. And, this person, who is the Lord of the Dungeon, the Dungeon Master, can control Fallon, now that apparently Fallon is, the dragon. Hey, so you know how, the dungeon has this weird sort of magic system that we don't really understand, and then Marcel, used all of the flesh of the dragon to make, Fallon a whole new body again, because she was only bones. Fallon is only bones now, and the dragon is all of the flesh. And, the more of the dragon there is, the less of the Fallon there is. And therefore, I don't know. Therefore, I don't know what's going on, actually. I don't actually know what's going on. And it just doesn't feel good. They got Fallon back for, like, literally one day. Like, less than a day. Maybe, like, one meal. Like, a single meal. And they, like... And then Marcel did magic. And then they met the Dungeon Master, who is the person in the painting. At least that question's been answered. And that question's been answered. That's nice. Oh, and then they all fell in a pit. That's great. That's great. I'm sure nothing bad could happen here. And that, whatever the Lord of the Dungeon just says that, they're gonna change Fallon's form is not gonna be a problem. Not gonna be a problem at all. I think it's gonna be fine. Hey, episode 11 and 13, you really, deviated from the format, and I'm not okay! I am not okay! What's going on? What's happening? And this isn't the end of the season. I gotta say that this whole thing, okay, this whole thing, all of these revelations, fighting a full red dragon, realizing that Fallon is just bones, realizing that Marcel knows black magic. And reconstitutes Fallon's entire body out of black magic and, dragon, remains. They have a nice bath together, so that's nice. That's good. That's nice. That's very good. But I want to say, I know that the bath scene is really important, but I also want to bring our attention to the fact that up here it says, Fallon says that there's, like, power welling up deep inside of her, and that, like, in the other corner over here, she just randomly casts magic because she just thinks about it. She just, like, thinks that she wants to protect everyone, and then boom, bada bing, Senji doesn't fucking die. Can we, I know that they look like they're about to kiss. They don't. It's sad. But, can we talk about the fact that, the really, really quick foreshadowing of this is crazy? Like, she is just, she comes back to life immediately and is able to use mana amazingly, and no one thinks that's, like, well, they think it's weird, but they don't have enough time to deal with it. They truly don't have enough time to deal with it. They don't have enough time to deal with it. And that's detrimental because the Lord of the Dungeon finds her fucking immediately. Finds that the dragon is dead fucking immediately. And then, activates dragon soul within Fallon, and Fallon is no longer Fallon, and is now a dragon, and, the Lord of the Dungeon wants to kill the party because they need to take Fallon back so that Fallon can find the king. And then she's gonna change that form for some reason. And that's not the end of the season. The fight with the Lord of the Dungeon, finding Fallon, all that stuff, not the end of the season. Not even the end of the anime. That's not the end of anything. That's the fucking middle. That's the middle. And we just go back. And we just go back to the format. After all this. Okay. After all of this. All of these bombs. We just go back to the format. And it is nice. It's a respite. Because I just lost my fucking mind. Which is crazy. But, like, hey, at least they get to, like, kind of, like, deal with their trauma together. That's nice. That's nice. That's nice, at least. We get some of our side characters back. They kind of deal with their trauma. Never mind, I'm unwell. Never mind. No, we're not gonna give back. The plot's back. Never mind, the plot's back. Never mind. We're good. The plot's back. We're fine. I'm okay. I'm fine. I love that my entire chat is just, well, not my entire chat, but one specific person is saying chicken lady, and I very much appreciate you. But yeah, so, like, this is a 24 episode anime. And, we have this, like, really enlightening and, like, essay-worthy first 10 episodes, and then, episode 11 is, like, bombshell, gay, bombshell, and then we go back to the format. We go back to the format of, like, oh, we're talking about eating. We go back to the format of talk about eating. Fight the monster, eat. Talk about eating, fight the monster, eat. all while, you know, dealing with trauma and bringing in our secondary characters, which is yay! But we don't know what happens to fucking Fallon until the end of episode 16. We don't know what happens to Fallon until the end of episode 16. We wait from episode 13 until episode 17. We still don't know a whole lot about the dungeon, but we know more now. We do, in fact, know more now, but I can't articulate it yet. I can't articulate it yet. I gotta think. Hold on. I gotta keep it together. Never mind, I'm gonna need a second! Okay, but also gay. She ripped open her shirt. Oh my god. I'm gonna need a whole, like, second. I'm gonna need, like, a little bit, though. This is too much. Where's my corkboard? Where's my corkboard? What's going on? Also, can you tell why I want to cosplay her? She's fucking incredible. But yeah, so she turns into a chicken. I'm gonna need a second. But yeah, so she turns into a thing that we call a chimera. Not only is she hot, and Marcel has this great, beautiful reaction to her ripping her shirt open. But why is she a chicken? Well, it's a good question. Mainly because I have an actual answer for this. Before the bit, I'm actually gonna answer your question. I'm gonna answer your question, Ray. And then for the bit, we're gonna go back and I'm gonna take a break after losing my mind, okay? Okay? Because this part of me freaking out is technically scripted, but this is how I freaked out when I found about it for the first time, so I wanted to give you guys a sort of experience. Yeah, so those are feathers. So in this universe, a fun little aside, in this universe, there are all the different types of dragons, like, ice, blah, 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 red, blah, have different types of sort of, like, vibes. And, no, it's feathers. It's feathers. The thing she's ripping open is a shirt. Laios' shirt, specifically. And, because they didn't have clothes for her, so she was wearing Laios' clothes. And yes, the feathers, she has feathers over her nips, she's got a beautiful bit of underboob, and then feathers everywhere else. But dragons in this universe have, like, different vibes. And so, when the lovely Lord of the Dungeon changed her form, they changed it to being a giant, dragon, but kind of like chimera centaur dragon, where, like, she has a dragon behind and a person top. And a person top. So she's kind of like a centaur dragon, and she has feathers, I think, one, because the author thought it was aesthetic. Two, in this universe, dragons that have feathers are actually ice dragons, so they kind of, like, melded. So, like, when the Lord of the Dungeon, like, you need to be dragon again, it was like, you're going to be both ice, like, it just kind of merged dragons, so it kind of turned into, became more of an ice dragon than a red dragon, but still dragon. But also because she was still had enough of Fallon in her, in the dragon, that it still kept dragon. So, yeah, it's, but yeah, so, the reason is that she's an ice dragon now and not a red dragon, but ice dragon actually kind of looks like chicken, so everyone called her chicken. Does that explain it? I could give you the wiki page. I'm still unwell, though. But yeah, so, she's an ice dragon, as opposed to a fire dragon, basically. But yeah, I realized that I didn't put her full form in here, and I don't, I think I have it somewhere later on in the presentation, and if not, during the break, I'll add it in. But, hard cut. What the fuck is going on? Why? I'm gonna need a second. One, to look at how beautiful she is, and two, to get out my corkboard, because, we have more to talk about here. The last few episode 11 to 13 and episode 17 kind of broke my brain a little bit, and I'm gonna need like a hot second to sort of collect myself. So I'll be right back. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna figure this out. We're gonna figure this out, gang. Don't go anywhere. Okay, so I read the entire manga. It took a long time, but I did. I did it. Hi. Welcome back, everybody. So, I think I figured it out. So, I read the entire manga. There's a lot going on. Let me tell you. A lot happened. A lot happened that I can't really describe. And so, let's just get into it. A lot happened. Like a lot. Eh. Food, no longer just food. It's no longer just food. You know how in episode 17 when they were fighting the Lord of the Dungeon, and they like sort of the rest of the dragon kind of like was like getting reconstituted by the Lord of the Dungeon, and the dragon meat that they had like prepared to eat later like rolled out of their camp, like the flesh and bone of the flesh of the dragon like rolled out of the camp and like turned back into flesh and blood and not food. Yeah, so food is no longer just food. Like Fallon is like some egg on some bacon, and they're like stuck together, but like you can like it still seems possible to separate them, but like if like an egg is a soul, and it's just on some bacon, and it's like it's a whole meal, but like you can easily separate them, but it is one thing. You just have to separate them with like a little bit of like thing. Yeah, so food is no longer just food, and like consumption is the only true way to really reconstitute matter. Consumption is the only way. So like how we know, like we already know that the dungeon itself is where life and death are completely ambiguous. Like, the soul is connected to a body. When it dies. Therefore, any part of that body is still body. So how does it stop being body? You eat it. The only parts of the dragon that didn't become Fallon, or that weren't under the Lord of the Dungeon's control, were the parts of the dragon that were in their stomachs. Were the parts of the dragon that they chewed and digested. Those are the only parts of the dragon that didn't become Fallon, that didn't become under the Lord of the Dungeon's control. So consumption is the only true way to really change what matter is. So if your body is eaten, there's no way that you can come back from the dead. Like, if you're fully decomposed. Like, Fallon was only able to come back from the dead because her skeleton was there. And her soul was already so disconnected that they couldn't use regular resurrection magic. If they tried to regularly resurrect her, the soul wouldn't have come back. They only could use black magic. But why did black magic work? We'll get to that. We'll get to why black magic worked. Because, like, it's a question, isn't it? It's a question. It's crazy. But so food is no longer just food. Like, a soul is an egg, and it is so delicate. It is so beautiful. It's a baby bird. Oh, it's such a little delicate egg. And I think you can make a billion things out of eggs. You can make an omelet out of eggs. You can make eggs and bacon. You can make a bunch of different things out of eggs. And the soul is so malleable like an egg. It's beautiful like that. But once it's connected to something, once it's mixed together with something, it's so hard to separate it. But luckily when it comes to Fallon, it's like bacon and eggs. you can separate it because she only has a little bit of her soul and skeleton in there, and most of it's dragon. So if we take the freaking dragon out of Fallon will be Fallon again. And the only way to do that, gotta double check something. I don't want to get, okay, cool. I don't want to get too far in. The only way that, to get Fallon away from the dragon is to eat the dragon. It's to eat the dragon part of Fallon. It just got crazy. It just got silly. But it'll work. It'll work. Because the only way to get rid of the dragon is to eat it. The Lord of the Dungeon can't control what's in your tummy. What? That's crazy. So we gotta eat Fallon. Consumption is the only true way to reconstitute matter. This is crazy. And another thing that I learned is that desire is just another form of hunger. It's just another form of hunger. Which is crazy. That's true. We haven't mentioned Azumi yet. I will say, for Azumi lovers, I did have to skip over Azumi for time reasons. But to quickly reiterate, Azumi is another member of the party that comes at the latter half of the anime, and it has more of a big thing. Has more of a big thing in the manga, and she is part beastkin as well. So she's mixed together with a beast, and she has asked them to get rid of the beast from her. But the reason the whole egg thing happens is because they kind of realize that Azumi's soul is kind of scrambled together with the beast's soul, and she's kind of like an omelet, and technically you could separate it, but it would harm the soul to an irreparable amount, so you probably can't do it. But with Fallon, she's such a new chimera that you can, it's separatable. There's more of the dragon than there is of Fallon, therefore the dragon is currently in control. But if you eat all of the dragon, then Fallon will be in control. That's the theory. That's the current working theory. Thank you, Azumi. Thank you, Azumi, for being a catalyst to learning how souls work. Also, Azumi is really, really great. She's a cat person, and I will have a little segment on her later. I promise. But she like Jolchuk, kind of serves a singular plot purpose and doesn't really serve, other than this specific instance, doesn't really serve a red string moment. So I had to cut her for time. I'm very sorry. But anyways, back to this. Don't worry, there'll be a whole section at the end that just says things that I miss that I really love. And we'll get there. Because there's no way I can do all of it. There's no way. Not unless I have 10 hours and an entire college level time to write an essay. Anyways, so desire is just a form of hunger. It's just another form of hunger. We learn this immediately, it's alluded to kind of throughout, but we kind of learn more about it when Senshi kind of gives us this whole tragic backstory, which is really awesome. Which is really, really awesome. And it's not awesome. It's awesome in a storytelling sense. It's not awesome because he's sad, and it's, did he commit a cannibalism or not? Unbeknownst to him. Turns out he didn't. Yay! But we don't know for a while. Anyways, yeah, so he kind of alludes to the fact that this dungeon has a strong sense of response to human greed and desires, and, if you want something a lot, it'll give it to you at, a huge price and a cost. And, in the manga, we kind of, get that a lot. With this beautiful winged lion and this giant pig man who is seeming to eat people? Eat people? Kinda? Like, that pig's just straight up eating people. For, you know. And you know, pigs in a lot of cultures, not a cult, well, kind of, in a lot of cultures, symbolize greed and desire and gluttony. And this pig is kind of giving us a backstory that humans kind of just thought that like he didn't like the pig didn't really care about human flesh, but like about eating humans, but the humans thought that he did. And so to like appease the humans, he was like, yeah, if you want me to eat you, then I will eat you, why not? And that's kind of like a core problem of desire being a form of hunger and trying to like people pleasing. But we don't really get to the whole people pleasing problem. But like when like a demon comes into your realm and like is like, hey, what do you want from me? I want to help. And they're like, oh my god, a demon, you want to eat us? He's like, no, but okay. And then he like gets a taste for it. Only good things can happen. And then also like, what is this winged lion doing over here? Can we like talk about the fact that like the winged lion's like just like licking the Lord of the Dungeon over here? Like what? Like it's just another form of hunger. Like so like desire is just another form of hunger. And like this little pixie is telling Laios all about the fact that this lion is trying to eat desire, and then the dungeon's trying to eat desire. What is all this about? And then there's also the last thing I learned from the manga that is really important that we touch on is that it's a privilege of the living to be able to eat. It is both a happy thing, yay, eating, but also there's a really large hierarchy of like kind of like eat or be eaten sort of vibes, where it's like, the strongest gets to eat, but also like it's kindness to be able to eat. So it's the privilege of the living to be able to eat. Like, in order to survive Senchi's like group of dwarves that he came into the mine with. So remember how I said we're gonna get into the fact that Senchi seemed to know a lot about the dungeon? Turns out he stumbled upon it like 100 years ago, before the dungeon was even opened. He kind of like stumbled upon the dungeon before it was like opened by people and like made surface. And yeah, him and his like dwarves like found it, and they were like mining and stuff. And the more that they wanted, the more that the dungeon gave them, and then took away. You know what I mean? Like like the dungeon would like grant their every wish at like the bottom, like at the bottoms of the level, like at the lower levels of the dungeon. The dungeon would like grant their every wish, but like it also felt like the dungeon was like fighting that urge as well, and so it like kept killing people with like monsters, and then like a lot of people in his like adventuring party, his dwarven adventuring party, like turned on each other because of the greed that kind of like seeped into them. And yeah, so it all kind of turned on a head where his mentor kind of was trying, like, didn't want or look for anything, which was super great of his mentor. But like this last person that was with them kind of like really wanted to be rich and stuff, and then they got into a fight. What is happening? Millie, I don't know what you are doing. And then they got into like a fight. And then they like his mentor beat the guy, but then they also got attacked by a hippogriff. And then then they also got attacked by a hippogriff. And then his mentor died, but not before serving him one last meal. And Senshi kind of always thought that he might have eaten the body of the person that his mentor killed, and not a hippogriff. But it turns out, yay, it was actually a hippogriff. Whew, thank God. Privilege of the living to be able to eat. He survived. He learned the horrors of the dungeon and was able to eat and survive. And the privilege of the living to be able to eat is not just about eating for fun, it's about survival. Nothing is simple in this anime. Nothing is simple in this manga. No. Eating is all about survival. But you also need to think about your nutrition and if it tastes good. Because if it doesn't taste good, then you don't want to eat it. But if like it doesn't have the right balance of foods, then you also you shouldn't eat it. And like, it's just so complicated to eat. And not enough people can like eat in this dungeon. Like, everybody just wants and wants and wants and wants. Like, the adventurers come in here, they strip all the gold off the castle. Because that's why it was called the Golden Castle. I found out the why it's called the Golden Castle is because it was covered in gold. And all the adventurers took it out because of their greed and left. And now the dungeon is getting greedy because not enough adventurers are coming in anymore to satiate the ecosystem. And, so like, that's fun. And so it wants more desires from people. It wants people to be here. It wants to have its wants. It wants to hunger. It's crazy. It's wild. Anyways, it's the privilege of the living to be able to survive, to be able to eat, to be able to consume, to be able to take care of themselves and their loved ones. And we have both a very beautiful picture of Senshi here, always dreaming of drinking the soup again and, like, reminiscing about the fact that his mentor chose his survival, which was so sweet. And then we have this other one, where it seems like Laos is fighting against himself to eat an unspecified object. And this comes with the whole, like, whoever is stronger gets to eat the thing. And, yeah. We'll get to that later. We'll get to that later. So, yeah. I'm kind of going a little too fast. I'm kind of dumping a lot. We're kind of, you know, food is no longer food. Consumption is the only true way to constitute matter, and desire is another form of hunger, and the privilege of the living was be able to eat. There's a lot of complicated food concepts that I'm kind of just throwing at you right now, so, let's back up. So, at the beginning, how did the dungeon come to be? So, I lied a little bit at the beginning. I lied a little bit at the beginning. So, you know how I said that the fight scene was the first few seconds of the first, like, minute or few seconds of the anime? I was wrong, and I lied. So, it actually starts with no intro music, and it starts with an actual, like, fun lore tidbit about how the dungeon came to be. And I kind of skipped over that because, like, that's not all, like, I mean, it's important for the storytelling, but, like, it doesn't seem relevant to food. But it's super relevant. Okay, so, how the dungeon came to be. So, the legend begins that it all began in a tiny village. And a giant fissure opened up, and from that fissure emerged a man. The man said that he was the king of the Golden Country, which was said to be destroyed 1,000 years ago. And it wasn't until and he came up and he, like, was, like, crawling and telling these people, like, in the catacombs, like, help. And that he said that it was a prosperous country and it was really going great until the Mad Mage cast a spell that sunk the Gold Country deep underground. So you know how I said that we don't really know how the castle got under? I also lied. Sorry. I got too into something else. I got too into the food and the whole ecosystem stuff. I forgot about the lore. But, so, so the whole castle went under the ground. The Mad Mage cast the spell. The whole castle, the whole country, under the ground, became the dungeon. And this old man, who said to be the king of the Golden Country, says that he shall bestow the kingdom onto whomever defeats the Mad Mage, and then he turned to dust. So that was the beginning of the anime. So we're going all the way back to the beginning. And it kind of is reiterated again when we got back to the middle of the anime. So, we're just kind of jumping around at this point. So we get back all the way back to the middle of the anime when our lovely heroes go to the Golden Country. They get kind of like abducted by ghosts when they're trying to go down into the dungeon to find Fallon, to try and dragon Fallon again. Kind of like going after her and trying to reconstitute her body. Yeah, so they get abducted by ghosts, and it turns out the ghosts are actually living sentient people, or were living sentient people, kind of as you assume with ghosts. But they were living sentient people that tried to escape their prison, and their prison is a bubble of immortality. Bubble of immortality at like the base of the dungeon. And yeah, so they abduct the people, and we kind of have this lovely like meeting with the leader of the people that were from the Golden Country. They've been surviving for 1,000 years, and in surviving for 1,000 years, because the Mad Mage cursed them with immortality, the old king Delgal, the guy that the dragon Fallon is trying to find, had always blamed himself that the Mad Mage turned into the Dungeon Master, who had cursed his people and made a hellscape of monsters to protect them. He always blamed himself, so in order to look for help, he headed to the surface. He headed to the surface, and the rest is history. So he blamed himself. He went to the surface, opened the dungeon up so people could come in, and told him that whoever defeated the Mad Mage got his riches. Now, as we know, that the dungeon is kind of like feeding on desire and greed. That's a great call, my guy. Anyways, so we kind of learned this. Don't worry about the fact that I did bad cropping on these ones. So we kind of learned about this in the fact that Yod, who is the grandson of this king, who has been cursed with immortality, no pupils. He kind of tells us that he was given a prophecy, and the reason that the ghosts abducted the party is because the Golden Country that's in a little bubble in the middle of the dungeon, they've been cursed with immortality, got a prophecy in their dream that said, "One shall arrive in the village with a winged sword in hand. They will be the hero who will defeat the Mad Mage and set us all free." Huh. Kind of vague. Just a sword in hand with a winged sword in hand? When'd you get this prophecy, huh, Yad? I wonder when you got this prophecy. But we don't know that yet. To go in chronological order, we don't know that yet. But I know who that is, and trust me, it's bad. I bet you can probably guess who they got that thing. And it's not the Lord of the Dungeon. Because the Lord of the Dungeon doesn't want someone to kill them. That wouldn't make any sense. So what is this other entity in the dungeon that is, like, telling these immortal people kind of, like, what to do? I don't know. We'll get there. Anyways, let's kind of dig into the Mad Mage. So we kind of know why the dungeon came to be. The dungeon came to be because the Mad Mage kind of went insane, brought the Golden Country 1,000 years ago under the earth, and the dungeon turned into a dungeon because the old king that was sick of immortality basically sicked adventurers onto this place to kill the Mad Mage. Now, there's a lot of backstory that goes on in this, but I will get a little bit into it, but I won't get too into it. But yeah, so the Dungeon Master and the dungeon. What is their sort of like relationship? As you can tell, the Dungeon Master is both a term for D&D, like who runs the dungeon. Very cool, very cool, very fun. I see what you're doing there, author of this work. In the anime, they call it the Lord of the Dungeon because they don't want copyright problems. But this was also but the manga was written in Japan, so I don't know if the copyright I don't know. Anyways, so the Dungeon Master sort of runs the dungeon. Is this person that we met that turned Fallon into Dragon Fallon, who was awake in the temple painting, in the living paintings, that seem to, at this point, we realize that the living paintings actually showed the past of the Lord of the Dungeons past, and the king that's opened the dungeons past was. Like, it's kind of crazy, and I won't get too into that either, but it's kind of crazy and kind of sad. But yeah, so Thistle, this is the name of the elf, with the purple-eyed elf, has a very unique relationship with the dungeon. They, with the use of that book, can control everything in the dungeon. The monsters, the layout, kind of everything, other than the adventurers. And the reason that it has a bunch of monsters in the dungeon, and continually more and more monsters in the dungeon, is because adventurers keep coming into the dungeon. And they really don't want adventurers coming to their dungeon, because they are trying to protect all of the people that they cursed with immortality. So Thistle kind of turns out to be Thistle kind of turns out to be be kind of a sad figure in the anime, in the manga, because they are just trying to protect their kingdom and people, and that desire has been kind of corrupted by the dungeon. Fun fact. So yeah, so their one-track mind is basically to keep all of the people that they curse with immortality safe and find the king. And we know now that the king died. But Thistle doesn't know that. Which is why they came up with the dragon is now turned Founder Dragon to look for King Delgal. But yeah. Yeah, he kind of died like 10 years ago. Opening the dungeon. But Thistle doesn't know that! Thistle doesn't know that because that happened on the surface, so Thistle can't see it. Anyways, yeah, so the Dungeon Master kind of works with the dungeon and is the Lord of the Dungeon. It's a pretty straightforward relationship on the surface. But there's a lot about it that kind of, like, we don't really understand. Because it seems like, yes, Thistle's kind of, like, in control of the dungeon, but as, like, we go through the story, it kind of really, you kind of start realizing that Thistle doesn't really know what's going on in the dungeon. Like, they don't know that King Delgal's gone. They can't, like, reason with adventurers. And, like, this weird thing keeps happening with their eyes, where it turns into this, like, weird, like, goat pupil thing. Like, anytime they get, like, really into the magic of the dungeon, like, their pupils kind of elongate in this, like, weird, goopy way. And that just kind of keeps happening. And it, like, actually, in sort of foreshadowing, it actually happened, if you go back and watch the living paintings, it happens in that episode. Go back and watch it. When they're confronting Laios in the painting, their pupils do that thing. It's freaky deaky. But yeah, so, like, kind of some foreshadowing a little bit that's been, like, happening, kind of talking a little bit about the dungeon, is that, like, yeah, Thistle doesn't really know what's going on with the dungeon, and is just trying to be in control of something that they aren't actually in control of. And it feels very weird. Like, the dungeon has a very specific layout, as we can kind of see on this slide. Like, it has stages of maturity, where it's like, we kind of learn through a different group, this, like, elven group that, like, is laying claim to the dungeon, that there is stages of maturity in a dungeon, where, like, the tallest, like, and we can kind of see on this, like, thing where the ground, this is the catacombs, oh look, that's the top of the dungeon, and you go down, that's the place that they started, and then they keep going down, and that's the water level, and they keep going down, and this is where they found the dragon, and then further down is deeper into the dungeon. But we kind of learned that there's, like, levels of maturity that Thistle doesn't seem to be aware of, and is just acting on, purely based on the fact that the fear and the desire that they have is like coursing through them and making that all of their actions be one thing. Like, the main reason that Thistle made the dungeon the way it is because Delgal, his dad, died, and he didn't feel like he was fit to rule. So Thistle kind of took it upon himself to learn black magic, and in doing so discovered a statue of a winged lion. And it's great because the winged lion sort of is like the beautiful symbol of this city, like their benevolent spirit. And so Thistle's like, yay, this is great. And then this statue bestowed on them lots of power and told them that it would have granted their desires. And of course Thistle said yes. I mean, why not? The winged lion is totally trustworthy. And so it made the dungeon, and is now just kind of consumed by the fact that it wants to keep everyone safe, and they're missing Delgal, so they've kind of been on a rampage for the last 10 years, which is how long the dungeon's been alive. A little bit of foreshadowing that we kind of learn throughout of like kind of why and how the dungeon works and why Thistle's in charge of it and how Thistle's in charge of it, but like not really in charge of it. It's weird. It's weird. And like we also like through all this we kind of learned a little bit more about how the dungeon works. Like at this one point, like Laos gets like a dream conversation with a winged lion figure, and the winged lion kind of like says that the dungeon is like sealed away. It's like sealed away, and if they want to like resurrect Fallon, they kind of need to like unseal the dungeon so that everywhere in the world resurrection magic can work and immortality can last and everyone would survive and no one would die. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? Yeah. Anyways, so like it's kind of really hard not to talk. It's kind of really hard to talk about the Dungeon Master in the dungeon without talking about the demon at the center. So I've been kind of alluding to this. I've been kind of alluding to this. This is when the spoilers get real big, and I'm sure I probably should have said that earlier, but this is when the spoilers get real big. But yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about dungeon mastering and dungeon masters without this little guy. So we'll come back. We'll come back to explaining some of these panels and why the fuck Marcel is here and who else is this other guy with a goat. They're all dungeon masters for some reason. We'll get there. But yeah, so it's kind of hard to talk about it without talking about the demon at the center. So in the anime, we kind of learn a little bit about the winged dragon, or the winged lion. And we are told in the anime, in the first part of the anime, that the winged lion is a benevolent creature that looks after the Golden Country. That is like their mascot. Now, as you can see from these pictures, that's probably not true. It's not really true. Like, it's just a cute little, like, lion with wings, and then it gets, like, horns and eyes. Like, a lot of eyes. And then it turns itself into itself with fish. Like, it, like, takes, like, the monsters and makes it itself into, like, a giant form. Which is not weird at all. And then also, like, in the same dream that I was talking about earlier, where they was, like, explaining how the dungeon worked to Laos, it also tells Laos that it is... it kind of explains itself as power. That the demon is itself power. The power to grant wishes of the Lord of the Dungeon, specifically. So how we were like, why isn't Thistle, why isn't Thistle, like, know how the dungeon works? That's because Thistle gets its power specifically from this guy. The demon at the center of the dungeon. And it gives its power. It's pure magic. It's pure possibility. It's pure desire. It's just wants to help. Kinda. And it can only help specifically the lords of the dungeon. And it doesn't really like Thistle anymore because Thistle kind of locked it away. Which is something we also learn in the anime. That Thistle kind of locked the dragon, the winged lion down at the bottom of the dungeon, and it's been screaming through help through dreams to people, and that can only end in good ways. So yeah, it's kind of trying to rebel against Thistle because Thistle was smart. I mean, given the fact that Thistle's like a dungeon master and is trying to kill a bunch of people, it was pretty smart and was like, hey, this winged lion's trying to run the show. I run the show. I am sealing you away, bitch. I am sealing you away. So it was pretty smart of Thistle, all things considered. But at the point in the anime and where this lion is talking to Laios, everyone's kind of under the impression, except for the Canaries and Kabaru and anybody else up on the surface, which we will get to, is basically like, yeah, this lion is like up on the up and up. We need to save this lion so we can defeat the Mad Mage. That's the good plan. Don't do it. Anyways, so what is the demon? Well, it's a lot of really disturbing panels in this manga. Let me tell you. But yeah, also remember how I had that pig eating people? Yeah, so the demon came from a crack in dimensions. And is the originator of black magic, fun fact, that sort of makes dungeons. Black magic is inherent to dungeons. What do you know? And kind of like decided to it wanted to understand people, and people inherently want things. We have wants, we have needs, we have things that we desire, and in doing so it realized that desire is a great form of sustenance. Desire is a great form of sustenance, and if they give humans what they desire, then that sort of like will continue to build and build and build on them, and that the people will sort of start like being filled with desire, and that way the demon can then eat the desire inside the people to then sustain itself, so it can help more people. It cultivates desire in people. It cultivates hunger in people to satiate its own hunger. It's just power. It's just hunger. It's not actually killing anyone. It's just eating their desire. It's fine. They used it. They got what they wanted. Now I need it so I can help the next person. It's fine. Whatever. It's not at all disturbing to see a giant man with a giant goat head with fingers come through and pick up a person and just stick their snout in their torso and eat something. That's not weird at all. But you might be asking, why in these panels is the demon different than the winged lion? Surely they can't be the same. They are the same. They are the same thing. The demon is kind of one thing. The demon's one thing. It's desire. It's power. It's magic. And a long time, why am I blurry? It's because it's crazy. Because what I'm saying is crazy. A long time ago, it basically realized that people would start like getting wise of it if it didn't change its form all the time. So it started changing its form to things that people would find like cute and good. And if we go back to like one of these panels up here, It shows that if the dungeon master is feeling uneasy or lonely, it appears to be cute and lovable. It makes it so you imprint on it. It makes it so you imprint on it, so like you trust it. And it's like trying to trust it, because like you are its source of food. You know, your desire is its source of food. It wouldn't be any good if you didn't trust it. Yeah, so yeah, so the demon is all the same, and it runs all of the dungeons. What? We'll get to that later. Also, there's at one point, this creepy panel that I won't get into, but you can just like the fact that Laios doesn't have a head for a second. It gets like dark, but in like a fun way. I gotta say, Dungeon Mashing gets dark in like a fun way. But yeah, so throughout the anime, I'm kind of dropping a lot here and kind of like skimming over a lot, but I'm trying to get you caught up. So you might be wondering, where were all of these signs? There was a lot of them. Pretty much if you go back and watch through the anime, and watch and read through the manga, there is basically a winged lion in like every set piece. Even in the cover. See that winged lion in the middle right there that looks like a gargoyle? That guy is on the cover in the background. They're so good at set piece foreshadowing. But yeah, that's in the background. Because I mean, technically it is the Golden Country. The Golden Country's like holy animal was a winged lion. And the demon took the form of the winged lion so that it could ingratiate itself to the people in the Golden Country, and specifically the Mad Mage. But there's also, like, throughout the dungeon, there's, like, so many things that have a winged lion face. Like, the living armor. Like, the main living armor that Laios fights against. It has a dragon head and winged, like, attachments. And Laios' sword that he gets from the living armor has these beautiful winged, this beautiful winged hilt, and it isn't until he gets to the Golden Country that a lion face appears on it. Like, a lion face appears on his sword, like, out of nowhere. Just kind of crazy. Just kind of weird. And also, a little bit more foreshadowing about how, the demon at the center kind of, like, controls things, and Thistle doesn't actually control things, is, that apparently the winged lion has been giving prophecies to the people of the Golden Country. So, the winged lion was the one that told, what's his name? The kid. Hold on. I'm getting tired. Yod. There it is. I almost said Vlad. I'm like, it's not Vlad. Told Yod that, a hero with a winged sword was gonna come and save them. Because the winged lion knew that Laios was getting close to the bottom of the dungeon and was like, hey, my peeps, why don't you help him out so he can kill Thistle? That's what you want. That's what I want. I need a new master. He also, if we look down here, also said that one of those prophecies that he gives to the people of the Golden Country was given to King Delgal about, he was one of the servant prophecies of why King Delgal left to the surface and opened the dungeon up to the outside world. So even through being chained down by the dungeon master, the person that he gives his magical power to, he is still able to usurp the dungeon master to allow for his plans to be a thing. So, like, he tells King Delgal to go to the surface and institute a, not necessarily, like, not in these words, but the point is to institute a sense of greed in the people of the town, to then come into the dungeon, give the dungeon more desires, so that he can grow in power, while also satiating the need, while also satiating and instigating Thistle to be more crazy, to be more desireful, to really go for its wants and kind of run amok and not really pay attention to the winged lion, because he's now shifted Thistle's focus completely onto finding King Delgol and killing all the adventurers instead of making sure that the winged lion is in prison. So we kind of use this one prophecy from King Delgol to kind of start his escape and open up the dungeon. And remember how I said that he told Laios? Remember I said that he told Laios that, like, he, if they open up the dungeon and make the dungeon part of the outside world, that all of his, like, power and, like, desire ability will, like, work, and they can, like, resurrect people outside and no one would die. Yeah, he's trying to fucking do that. He's trying to rule the world. Because he's not, you know, satiated by being stuck in prison. Who would be? Who would be? He's just trying to help people, and if he is the king of the world, then he can help everybody. He can help everybody! He can give everyone's desire can be granted, and then he can eat them. And then more people will be born, and then the cycle continues. It's just an ecosystem based purely on desire and hunger and no one ever being satiated. That's fine. That's fine. It works. Totally. Totally it makes sense. Anyways, yeah, so there's been a lot of foreshadowing of this sort of plot happening, and yeah, like, I hope that if you had watched the anime, you would sort of started to see a little bit of the cracks of how they went so hard on ecology, and things, to, like, show that, like, nutrients and, like, a proper ecosystem was, like, good, and then now they're introducing, like, an extra, like, a super element to that of, like, what if there was a being that was was at the top of the food chain, but, like, by being at the top of the food chain, fully a super predator that's just gets introduced to an already usable ecosystem and just fucking takes over. Like, through magic. It's so cool. It's such a great premise. It's so sweet. And, like, also, like, remember when, oh man, I had a thought and it's gone now. But, like, they, like, were talking about, when they were talking about the fact that, like, when I said, like, there's, like, something to this and we didn't really get into it, you know how, like, Senshi was like, hey, it's kind of crazy that adventurers are already part of the dungeon ecosystem. That's because the dungeon is supposed to eat them. The demon planned for adventurers to be there so they could be part of the ecosystem. It's all premeditated. It's made by a super entity that is trying to take over the ecosystem of the above world. It's crazy. And, like, it's like, yes, as my chat says, it's like 100% a metaphor for capitalism, but it's also a metaphor for, like, a lot of ecological struggles because of capitalism. But still, it's fucking cool. Anyways, continuing. So another big part of kind of this whole part, like, we're talking a lot about, like, the dungeon and the dungeon master and the demon at the center of everything. But, like, food is still a huge part about it. Like, food never isn't a huge part of this anime, of this story. Food is always at the center. And as we talked a little bit about like, how consumption is about reconstituting and changing matter from one thing to another, that is kind of, like, the key point of food at this point in the story. I mean, it means a lot of things in the point of the story, but, like, not only, it's, like, it's used as, like, a metaphor
It's used as a metaphor for, like, souls, like eggs being souls. And it also is used to, like, kind of show that, like, things don't stop being what they are without something else interacting with it. Or a significant amount of time of decomposition. But when you are in a dungeon that doesn't allow things to die, when you're in a dungeon that doesn't allow things to die, and where their souls are tethered to their bodies, and where immortality reigns supreme, flesh cannot decompose. Flesh and food cannot truly decompose. People cannot truly decompose. It can't. There's no other way to change one thing into another without an outside force. And the outside force is the adventurers. And the outside force is the adventurers eating. Because through the digestive system, it changes what it is. Like, it's crazy. Like, in our world, in the surface world, like, it's honestly crazy. Like, in the real world and in the surface world of Delicious and Dungeon, how it works I'm super blurry. How it works is, like, something will decompose and the matter will change. Or, like, something will decompose and the matter will change, or you will eat it and you'll shit or piss it out and the matter will change, and then it will continue on the cycle. But in the dungeon, that cycle doesn't exist because nothing can truly die. You can always bring it back. Come on. There we go. You can always bring it back. And it's truly based on, like, the magic that's at work here. If a complete entity is at the heart of an ecosystem, it either has to, the complete heart of the center of the ecosystem, it can decide what the ecosystem is. And for the most part, it doesn't care, but it cares enough to allow things to be resurrected. And if things don't die, then nothing new can happen. And the only new things that can happen come from the demon. And the only new things that come from the demon are monsters, or curses, or spells. The demon cannot create sustainable life. It just can create things that desire something. Because in itself desires something. So in this anime, food means a lot of different things. It means survival. It means the difference between life and death. It means change. It means how, like, the metaphors for souls and bodies. It ultimately means that you can't survive without there being some sort of life or death cycle. If nothing dies, then there's almost no point. And we kind of bring this back. Like, food is, like, really, really important in this anime. And a lot of things, like, that kind of touch on these larger, more metaphorical aspects of what food means kind of happen. Like, I will say, and which is why I love the first 10 minutes of the anime, is because it talks about it kind of immediately. We lost 3 days of food in a trap we fell into, and sort of, like, the main core problem that we were introduced to at the beginning of the anime was that they couldn't survive without food. They were subject to death. They had a folly in planning because food is so intrinsic and important to survival, to being nutritious, to replenishing their mana, to everything that people in the surface world need to survive. And they didn't prioritize that. And that is a huge part of what food means. Food means survival. But it also means flesh and blood and bone. Not only does it mean yummy food, we get nutrients from it, but it also talks a lot about where the food comes from. And we talk about this like really importantly, and in a way that's like so meticulous when they're reconstructing Fallon's spine. And I know it's weird to be like, oh, we're talking about food. Why are we talking about Fallon's dead body? Because in some ways, our bodies are food for something. Flesh and blood and bone are food in some ways. And to really understand that, they kind of introduced that early on with the slimes and like taking apart other other monsters and kind of like really talking about the organs and how the bodies work. But they also brought that same amount of complexity and emotion and cooking sort of framework to the scene where they're reconstructing Fallon's body, which kind of makes us feel like everything is food, life is food, you know? And it's like really kind of like, not only is like food survival for the things that are consuming it, but the decomposing the dead the parts of the body, the flesh, the blood, the bone, are also have been food at one point. And without it, survival in life couldn't happen. Decomposing is important and intrinsic to, and knowing how bodies work is intrinsic to allowing life to be sustained. And last but not least, the point is less that everything is food, but rather that everything is edible is a body of some type. Yes. That is very true. Flesh and blood and bone is edible. It is a body of some type. They treat something edible the same way they treat the body of a dead friend. It's all a body of some type. It's all should be respected, and it all should be known and used to understand life. We also get another part of like how food is so important is that Yad tells them that that the people of the Golden Country have no appetite to speak of. They don't have an appetite. They don't eat. They are immortal. They need nothing to sustain their life. They don't need to eat. They don't need to sleep. They really don't have anything. They're just kind of souls. Husks of themselves. Which really brings back the privilege. It's the privilege of the living that is able to eat. It's the privilege of the living to be able to be mortal. To be able to interact with the world on an intrinsic economic and ecosystem level. The dead can't do that. The dead should be part of the ecosystem, but once you are removed from the ecosystem entirely and only allowed to be living, you can't, to be immortal, to not age, to not have mortality, you are extracted from the ecosystem and are not able to engage with it. You're not able to eat. You're not able to defecate. You're not able to be a part of what makes the world alive. And that is another huge part of what food means. It's a privilege of the living to be able to eat. Because even if you're fully immortal, what's the fucking point of eating? What's the fucking point of engaging with the world around you? Question, do you think they also have no desire, which the demon has already taken from them after all this time? No. I do not think they have no desire. Because I think that they want to be freed. They want to not be immortal anymore. To have no desire is to not want anything. And that is, we get to that a little bit later, but that is also almost impossible. There is definitely a part of it, of their immortality, where I don't think the demon had to take anything away from them, because by being immortal, they've been taken away from the ecosystem. And to be taken away from the ecosystem is to basically be a ghost or a periphery or a spirit that can't interact. And the only thing that they can want is to bridge that gap and be part of the ecosystem again, or to fully be to fade to dust. So like, they don't have a lot of desires, but I think the reason that they don't have desire is because of the immortality, and less because the demon ate it. Because the reason that I say this is that the reason that the demon has this sort of Lord of the Dungeon Master kind of ecosystem with itself is because the demon was sealed away, and a lot of its power was stripped, and it was really only able to sort of sustain itself through the Dungeon Master kind of taking its power and doing things with it, and then eating the Dungeon Master, if that makes sense. And like, the only way for it to actually kind of like do this, like to do its demon thing that it did at the beginning of time, which was what we saw with the pig earlier, was to be back on the surface and be a part of the ecosystem and kind of take it over. So there's a lot of things about like immortality being the forced removal, like being away in the dungeon, being immortal, being trapped by magic or whatever, is being the forced removal from the ecosystem and is not able to engage in nutrients and sustenance and life, because food is life. That is sort of, I think, the at least that's what I took away. That's what I took away as being what food, how the demon kind of interacted. But we'll get more into that. The canaries talk a lot about that. But yeah, so that's kind of how food works in this sort of scenario. Like, there's been a lot of foreshadowing about it. We've talked a lot about it earlier and things, but like, it's really solidified at this point. That food is so much more than just food. It's life, it's sustenance, it's being part of the ecosystem, it is a privilege, it is community, it is desire, it is hunger, it is a satiation of those things, and it allows you to be a part of a cycle. And that, I think, is beautiful. Now, we're very close to the end, don't worry. We're very, very, very close to the end. We're very close to the end. I'll speed up a little bit. So now, you might be wondering, why the heck did the demon decide that Laios and the party were who they wanted to be, go back to the bottom, to free it from the bottom of the dungeon? So the party's purpose, kind of like in this whole thing, I must watch this on the rest of the mod because I'm tired. Yeah, no worries, Edgerfit, no worries. I'm trying to finish, I'm doing my best to finish this as fast as I can. I went a little hard. On it. But yeah, so the party's purpose, kind of throughout this whole story, is the folly of hubris, but also the growth of people. We kind of see, like, even at the beginning, the folly of their hubris, feeling like they can take on this red dragon without taking care of themselves. And then they take through taking care of themselves, through eating and opening up to each other and a bunch of different stuff, they've grown as people. But also, the sort of lore purpose of the party is to be manipulated by the demon. It isn't until the Golden Country where the demon really starts showing, like the episode in the anime, the Golden Country, where the demon really starts showing itself to people, to them, because none of the other adventurers really had gotten that far into the dungeon yet. And so it's kind of latching on to Laos and the party to be like, hey, you're the closest to me. Maybe you should help me out. And it kind of like has this thing where it's kind of cozying up to Laos, telling Laos how cool he is, that he should be king, and that he can grant all of its desires, and yada yada yada. And it also kind of like it's also kind of like asking the party like later on that like, hey, if we, you know, with like Marcel's ideals, with your sense of generosity and curiosity, with Senji's intuition, with Childrek's experience, and Izumi's wild spirit, we need not fear the Canaries. Trust in your own powers. Let us go up to the surface together. Classic demon trying to get them to do the thing that they want. And the whole kind of the purpose for being able to get this far, for the demon allowing them to get this far, is that the Canaries are coming in, so the Dungeon Master's kind of like turned its focus to the Canaries, which we will get to, coming into the dungeon, and instead is allowing Laos' party to get into the dungeon and release the Winged Lion, which is what the Winged Lion wants. So they're the party's purpose plainly is to release the Winged Lion and to be corrupted by the Winged Lion. Now, they don't necessarily get to have that happen because of the beautiful Canaries. Now, in the anime, the Canaries are kind of set up to be antagonists. They're there to disrupt the economic structure of the island that this dungeon is on. And basically saying, hey, this dungeon is getting out of control, it's ours now. And, I mean, no one likes rich people coming in and stealing their stuff, but we kind of give a sort of like, these people are we don't know anything about them. They don't really like tell us whether or not they're good. They just say, hey, the dungeon is getting out of control, give it to us, we'll clear it out. And obviously for economic reasons, no one wants to do that, because there's riches and stuff down there. But their kind of purpose in the storyline is to make you think that they're an antagonistic force, and then realize that the Winged Lion is actually the antagonist, and they're actually coming there to save everybody. They don't do it in an elegant way, and they definitely trigger a lot of bad things because they kind of have a fight first, talk later sort of scenario. But their idea that black magic is bad, what Marcel uses, and that the dungeons shouldn't get too powerful, are correct. Because the more the dungeon gets more powerful, the more the monsters kind of explode out the surface, and the demon can be free. And they don't want that, because turns out the elves kind of are the ones that sealed the demon away a long time ago, and they told no one. They told no one about this. They just said, hey, black magic banned, because it's demon magic, and dungeon creation magic. And yeah, so they didn't tell anyone about this. They just said, this is banned, you can't do it. And then they come in and they take over dungeons before it gets too bad. And they tell no one. Which I get. It's like the classic fantasy trope of like, hey, if we don't actually tell anyone about this terrible, dark secret, no one's gonna find out about it. We're just gonna destroy all knowledge of it, and then we will be the only ones that know about it, and we will take care of it. And that never works. That never works. Common knowledge is better. Anyways, that's the Canary's purpose, kind of in the plotline, is to sort of be an antagonistic force, and then a savior force, and then a force of like, you're kind of dumb with how you go about your bureaucracy. But the real reason that the Canaries are a thing is to introduce Mithrin. Now, Mithrin is a was a dungeon master and is a character that has had all of its desire eaten by the demon, other than his desire to kill the demon. Like, he won't eat, he won't bathe, he won't take care of himself in any way. He needs to be constantly babysat to make sure he doesn't die, because he only wants to kill demons. He only wants to kill the demon. And it's an incredibly interesting plotline that I do not have enough time to get into, but I highly recommend watching it and reading it because it's so interesting. Next, Kabru's purpose. So, you remember I said that there were secondary characters that were important later, but we'll get to it. We're getting to it now. So, Kabru, who I have not touched on at all, is introduced in the middle of the anime in, like, kind of random ways, where you're like, why are we getting an episode about this guy? I don't really understand him. And you don't really understand his purpose until later on in the manga, because he only becomes relevant later on in the manga when he saves Mithrin from dying. He saves Mithrin from dying, and, well, he becomes relevant before that because he's there when Fallon turns into a dragon with Shotoru and a bunch of other people, and is basically like, hey, what the fuck's going on? And is basically convinced by Laos that Laos is like, I don't want to become the king of the dungeon. I just need y'all to stall on the surface so that I can save my sister. And so Kabru's like, okay, I will do that, and I will kind of try to figure out what the fuck these canaries are all about. So his whole thing is being like a diplomat up on the surface with the canaries, learning the canaries' whole deal, and then stalling the canaries as much as he can so that Laos's group can save his sister. However, in doing that, he stalls enough that they release the demon. So Kabru's whole thing is kind of like being the rational one, saving Mithrin from dying, and being like, hey, I don't really like monsters for lots of very reasons. For like a lot of reasons, he kind of like, is kind of a sociopath? I don't know. Early on, I didn't really understand him, and then I kind of understood him given the fact that he has like a really tragic backstory with monsters, and he tries really hard to understand people. Like, him and Laos are like perfect foils for each other. He loves people, Laos hates people, he hates monsters, Laos loves monsters, but they kind of have to work together in order to save the whole world. And that's kind of Kabru's purpose. He's sort of like the foil to a lot of people that aren't really looking at the big picture. He's a foil to Laos, he's a foil to the Canaries, he's a foil to Mithrin, and he kind of is the only one that's like, hey, maybe we kind of like see both sides here. And he's honestly kind of what we need in this sort of universe, and I really like Kabru. And again, not gonna get super into it, but he's really important when it comes to dealing with the Canaries and being a foil. So that's a whole another person. After that, continuing on this whole character flaws and foils area, we learned a lot about, because when desire gets into the equation, we learn a whole lot about what characters care about at their core and what can be manipulated by desire demons. And we learned that specifically about Marcel a lot. So remember how I said at the very, very beginning that Marcel has a huge importance on loyalty? Yeah, so that's because she's actually not an elf, but she's a half-elf. Crazy, right? And she saw her dad die, and her mom basically kind of abandoned her. Her mom was an elf and her dad was a human, and she basically saw her dad die before she became of age, because she's an elf, she grows much slower, and saw her mom kind of like leave because her mom had so many other years to live and was like, whatever. So she has a huge like complex when it comes to the immortality of elves versus all of her friends, and is fiercely loyal for that reason, and really is afraid of being left behind. And that kind of whole thing gets kind of exacerbated as things go on, and the demon is like, I can use this, and kind of turns her into after Thistle kicks the bucket, turns her into the new dungeon master, and we're finally, the rest of the party is like, maybe this wasn't a good idea. Maybe this wasn't a good idea. At least something happened. The character flaw, Michelle's character flaws and foils, really, we get a glimpse of that when Fallon goes away, and she's really, really good at hiding it throughout, but, like, you kind of totally see where she's coming from. And I think that's such a good way to write a character. She cares so much about her friends, but through the desire to keep them, like, the desire to keep them safe is, like, is also, like, a huge part of the desires in this manga, with, like, Thistle's desire to keep, you know, the Golden Country safe, and with Marcille's desire to keep her friends safe and not die, to make them immortal, and all of those things. The fear of death and the fear of different lifespans really kind of, like, is her main character foil and flaw, and one that Laos has already kind of, like, been dealing with himself throughout this whole thing with Fallon, but Marcille has basically been kind of doing the stages of grief, where she's just been in denial the whole time while Laos is kind of trying to figure things out, which I think is really great for Laos, and is a very similar character flaw and foil to Marcille, but he kind of has it more figured out than her at the time when she turns into the Dungeon Master. And so it's really, really interesting to kind of see the differences in characters where their flaws and foils kind of were aligned until Laos kind of, like, realized what food meant, and with Marcille being a very big denier of the dungeon food, of the dungeon ecosystem, and of Fallon's, like, whole deal. Once, like, she realizes that the canaries are coming to harm her friends for going too far in the dungeon, harm her for using black magic, the only thing that she feels like she can turn to is the demon. And the demon basically tells her that she is 100% able to keep her friends safe. And at this point, Marcille doesn't know that the demon is bad. Laos is starting to have an idea, but Marcille doesn't know, because Marcille's, like, asleep at a point. The plot lines will make sense. But yeah, so when it comes to the demon at the end and the finale of this whole thing, a lot of the flaws in the foils really, really come to light. And her foil is both how much her flaw is how much loyalty she has and how much she cares about her friends, and her deep-seated fear that they will leave her behind because she has a longer lifespan than them. And also her foil is, again, how much she loves her friends. Because once she realizes that being the dungeon master and being under the demon's control is hurting them, she is able to rid herself of that control pretty easily, which is very, very cool. So having that loyalty be such an important duality in a character, being a flaw and a foil, makes me so happy. I love complex characters like this, and it reminds me a lot of Percy Jackson. But yeah, it's really, really cool. Love that about Marcille. The next character with flaws and foils that kind of is really a big thing at the end of the manga is Laos. So remember how he loved monsters? Yeah, so yeah. He kind of to the outside world seems like he kind of goes into that way too hard. And cares way too much about how about being a monster and his hatred of humans, and the demon kind of plays on that sort of foil of his, that flaw of his. But earlier on, throughout this time with Marcille becoming the dungeon master, he learns a lot about the fact that you can't make everyone happy. Like, not everyone is gonna like the same food. Not everyone's gonna have the same needs. Not everyone's gonna survive the same thing. You can't satisfy everyone. And that is a huge part of his foil that he learns from Kabru. that really allows him to, when it feels like the demon has him in his clutches, really to turn the tide in a way that is fucking insane and also really, really satisfying. And allowing both Marcel and Laios, who have the most plot-driven character motivations, to have these large moments at the end of the manga, really, really solidifies how much attention to detail the complex characters that were set up at the beginning of the story really, like, pays off at the end. Yeah, and they turn, the flaws and foils turn into strengths. Like, they may be going, Laios may look like he's eating the demon, but he uses what he knows he's good at to trick the demon into success. You're actually gonna just have to read it or watch it to understand, because it's kind of crazy. Laios has this incredible flipping of logic that I had to read over and over again to freaking understand, and it's beautiful, it's lovely, and he turned his love of monsters and his flaw of hating people into a strength of understanding that even this demon has a flaw, has a desire that Laios can exploit. It's really fucking cool. He turns his the loving of monsters and food and the need of consumption saved the day somehow. But yeah, and with that, that's the end. At the end, it all kind of works out. Not to spoil the ending or anything, but it all works out. The lovely Fallon is back. Laios has a giant party where they all eat Fallon's body, except the dragon part of her body. Mithrin learns to have a desire again. It's honestly, the end is like 3 chapters, and it's absolutely beautiful. But yeah, so, there's a lot more I could talk about. I mean, even though it's the end, I missed a lot. There's a lot to say. Like, Chilchuck has a union rep stance. He's a father. There's a lot of adventurer politics that I didn't really get into and only kind of touched on with the Canaries. Like, the whole island is, like, run by a governor, and then that's completely upturned by the fact that, Laios becomes king at the end. I didn't really go into what black magic is. I kind of alluded to it, that, like, black magic is dungeon magic. But we didn't really get into, like, the whole magic system. Yeah, like, the whole encyclopedic breakdown of dungeon magic. Like, the author of this book, like, breaks it fucking down for you. And it's great. If you love magic systems, this story is so for you. Also, the fact that Senshi always gets panty-shotted. I didn't talk about it. And I feel bad. Because that's one of the things that I love about this as well. None of the girls get panty-shotted. Only Senshi does. And it's so great. Also, and I'm very sorry for everybody, I really didn't talk about Azumi. Mainly, I love Azumi. Azumi is the best. Azumi plays a very important role in understanding how souls and chimeras work. They are so good. I love Azumi so much. But the reason I didn't really bring in an Azumi a whole lot is, much like I kind of only touched on Chilchuck a little bit at the beginning, and kind of focused on Marcel, Senshi, and Laios, is because they had the most to do with the core tenets of the most to do with the core tenets of the plot when in regards to food and desire and life and death. Chilchuck and Azumi have very important moments and very important parts of this plotline that I would love for you to see for yourself. And I also want you to realize that And Azumi kind of at the end is also sort of comic relief. Not like a whole lot, but like she brings a really refreshing perspective into what is a darker half of the story. And I love her very, very much. She's a literal cat. I love her so much. Please go check her out. She's adorable. I also didn't really get into a lot of the Marcel and Fallon backstory and Marcel's deep fear and lifespan woes. I talked about it a little bit with the character flaws and why Marcel really cares about Fallon and Gay, but like there could be a whole paper written about it. I also I talked a little bit more about Laos and Kabru than I thought I was going to, but with Laos and Shuro was another member of their party that I just didn't really talk about. Like, there are two other party members that like absconded away from them at the beginning of the anime, do come back and do play a pretty significant secondary person role in the upper party adventurer politics. But when it comes to the dungeon lore craziness, they don't play a whole lot. It pretty much Laos and Shuro basically is just a catalyst for Laos kind of learning that not everyone likes him and kind of understanding how people work better. And then Laos becomes king at the end. There's a lot of things that I missed. As I said, this is a 3.5 hour freaking video essay that I've made that you guys funded, and but yeah, I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours and hours and go through it through a fine-tooth comb microscopically and talk about every part of the manga, every part of the show that has foreshadowing and character moments and foils and flaws and blah 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 blah. I could do that forever. However, I should probably eat dinner. But yeah, it's honestly a incredible show, and the storytelling is top notch. It is a masterclass in storytelling and food. It sets up everything in a storytelling way that is so super easily digestible, eases you into the fantasy elements, like gives you a like big epic fight scene and a character death right off the bat, and then eases you into all of the fantasy elements and the food plot, and how food is super important to the plot through episodic narratives, and then it drops the plot on you. And then it gives you a breather again of episodic narratives, and then again, plot, episodic narratives, plot, episodic narratives, until you get to basically the last, like, 11 chapters of the manga, where it's just like, blah, 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 blah. Like, it ramps up, it gets dark, but in a way that's still super refreshing, and you aren't jarred by the fact that it happens. Like, the anime starts with a character death, and while it feels lighthearted at moments and throughout, death, life, mortality, immortality, all of that is there at the very, very beginning. And it doesn't shy away from it, and it allows levity to happen in spite of it. And I think that's beautiful. But yeah, in conclusion, it's fucking great. It's a fucking great story. The storytelling is impeccable and makes you see both the fantasy genre and food in a whole different light. It weaves complex character motivations with episodic narratives and ecological structures to come together with an incredible takeaway. Food is life, hunger is the most powerful motivator, and accepting mortality is the only way for the cycle of life to continue. Thank you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for hanging out. I hope this was everything you guys wanted. Oh boy. I spent so long on this in the last 3 days. I had everything that I wanted laid out, and then I put, as you can see, I kind of with the fact that I didn't fully crop these screenshots, I didn't have enough time to fully crop everything before I had to go live. So I was like, it's good enough. It's fine. But Thank you for coming along, everybody. I hope that was super, super interesting. If you weren't able to take it all in at one point, I understand. I know it's not for everybody. Video essays are not for everybody. I know not a lot of you wanted to be spoiled, so I completely understand if you had to hop out. But yeah, if you would like to watch this anime, please do. It's great. I highly recommend it. It does it's on the caliber of anime storytelling of Full Metal Alchemist and things like that. It's incredibly well thought out, very, very intentionally written, and honestly one of the best manga stories I've read in a long time, in terms of just narrative focus. And if you didn't know, Ryoko Q, I actually don't know how to say her name. Ryoko Kui? I know how to spell it. Is a female author and did such a good job. So yeah, please check it out. This was my video essay to tell you everything you need to know about it. If you don't want to watch it, but hopefully it did inspire you to watch it, because as much as I feel like I talked a lot about the intrinsic plot, there's a lot that I missed. Like, a lot. So, go and check it out. As a show, it is possibly unique in that I have never seen one person give a bad review. That's not to say it's for everyone, but it's still surprising. Yeah, I've never heard anyone say anything other than good things. I've never heard anyone say anything other than good things. Like, the only mixed review that I've seen was that it's, like, really graphic. And it can be. It can be really graphic. But, like, whereas a lot of, like, things, like, make me feel, like, gross when it's super graphic, it's, like, graphic in, like, a really interestingly stylistic way that doesn't really register as graphic to me. Like, the whole, like, this is full of blood and guts and gore, and this is, like, a bunch of intestines on the ground. But it's also, like, it's just presented in a way that's not as jarring. Also gay. I have not watched Furin yet. It's on my list. It is on my list. I have not watched Furin yet. I've heard very good things. I've heard very, very good things. But yeah, my voice is hoarse. I should probably eat some dinner. And yeah. Thank y'all so much for coming with me on this journey. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope this was fun. I did my best to be as performative as possible, but I definitely got into the essay writing as a little bit more. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a whole heck of a blast. Thank you to everybody who donated to my Ko-fi to get this to be possible. If you would like to get another cool stream, maybe not another one of these types of things, but more of an art-focused thing, which is what I usually do, please go and support me on my Ko-fi. It's would be really, really cool. We are 3% of the way to our $150 goal before the end of September, so please, please, please go and check that out. We have quite a ways left to go, and it would mean the whole world to me to get this art collab going. So I'm really excited about it. Also, for anyone that's here that's just hanging out, if you don't know who I am, my name is Bree. I'm a digital artist here on Twitch. I stream every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. I love all things anime and TTRPG and fantasy and just a bunch of really cool stuff. So if that is interesting to you, please hang out with me. I do a lot of art, mostly art, talk a lot about anime, and sometimes do silly things like this. So go and check it out. Go and check me out. Please give me a follow on all the things. And yeah, I will see you all on Thursday for more art. We're gonna be working on Amity's commission of their kitty cat, so join me for that. It's gonna be really, really cute. And until then, have a great rest of your week. Bye, everybody! Mwah.